Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, and all sorts of good things. And joining me here today on the final regular episode of the John Campea Show before Christmas, he is the Santa Claus of the airways. He's the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
John, I'm doing great. Great. We got Wonder Woman on the I downloaded HBO Max.
Nice.
I watched the beginning of Alien versus Predator Requiem because I love the moment where the Predator, who's the working class predator on the Predator homeworld,
the working class predator.
He gets the message like something went down on Earth and he kind of like has to go, I guess I got to go fix this. I want to see that movie. I want to see the movie about the workaday predators that make their society go.
Hey, I got a quick question. Have you checked out The Stand yet? Because I know The Stand came out. I have not checked it out yet. Have you? Oh, that's not a good looking face. Is it that good?
Dude, you know what? The first hour of The Stand might very well be one of the single most disappointing hours of anything that I've ever seen. And it's well made. And I think that James Marsden as Stu Redman is really good. And all the stuff with him was great. But because they've fallen back on this old episodic flashback structure that is so popular in TV since Lost, they spend most of the hour with Harold Lauder, one of the most loathsome characters in the book, who isn't really introduced until later. And while the whole movie is about a journey, and when you're flashing back and going forward, it sort of ruins the whole story itself. And I am perplexed by their choice of using this tired narrative trope. I felt like I was watching an episode of Manifest, and you know how much I love Manifest.
You love Manifest. Well, I haven't had a chance to start watching it yet myself, so I'm hoping to get around to doing that sometime over the Christmas break.
And don't get me wrong, I'm going to watch every single episode, but oh my God.
Not a good start. Well, think of it this way. Spartacus, which is one of my 3 all-time favorite shows ever, the first 3 episodes of that is some of the worst television ever made. So I don't know, hang in there. Maybe there's hope. But hey, I wanted to share something with you guys. You guys might know, if you follow me on social media, a little while ago, I was a guest on the Designing Hollywood podcast. And that's a podcast run by these Hollywood costume designers. And I was interviewed by this fabulous dude who's did the costume design for a lot of the DC movies and MCU movies and things like that. That was great. Anyway, it's run by this, one of the people who run it is this woman by the name of Marilyn Vance, who is a Hollywood costume designer. And she heard me say on the show that one of my all-time favorite movies, whenever somebody asks me, John, what's an older movie that they never did a sequel for, that if they could do a sequel, you would greenlight the sequel right away? And I always say the same thing: Mystery Men. I love Mystery Men. Well, Marilyn Vance, turns out, was the costume designer on Mystery Men. And I just got this FedEx to me yesterday. This is, let's see if the camera will get into focus here, the original costume design that Marilyn, with her notes, this is before they cast Greg Kinnear. And she sent me the original sketches she did of Captain Amazing. And this is going to be the first thing that I frame and put up in my new house that I'm so excited about. I just geeked out. When I opened this thing and I saw that thing, Rob, I just freaked the hell out. Absolutely. It was great.
Okay. Can I just chime in here?
Sure.
Marilyn Vance is not just a woman who has a podcast. Marilyn Vance is one of, perhaps in our lifetimes, the single greatest costume designer in Hollywood history. Why, you might ask? Allow me to elucidate. Marilyn Vance, here are some of her credits: 48 Hours, Romancing the Stone, Streets of Fire, The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Untouchables, Predator, Action Jackson, Die Hard, Roadhouse, Uncle Buck, Pretty Woman, Die Hard 2, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, Predator 2, The Rocketeer, The Last Boy Scout, Judgment Night, G.I. Jane, Mystery Men, I mean, she's a legend. Every time I saw a movie with her credits in it when I was a young guy growing up in the 90s in LA, I'm like, well, this movie's going to entertain me. Man, do I love her. And I can't believe you're friends with her. I'm so jelly.
Well, this is the funny, it's just that she had heard that I'd loved Mystery Men so much. And of course, where's Mystery Men? There's Mystery Men there. She was the costume designer on Mystery Men. And I absolutely freaked out hearing that. And so she sent me these sketches. It was great. Now, by the way, one of Marilyn's partners, who is also fantastic, she was great, but her boyfriend apparently has watched the show for quite a while. And he heard me say, his name's Vartan. And he had heard me say that Magneto is my all-time favorite comic book character. So he sent me in the same package X-Men #1 with Magneto, with the Magneto cover. Tell me this isn't a good day, Rob. Tell me this isn't a very good day in the Campea household. It's a
pretty good day. You know, we did last night on Whining About Movies, we did Die Hard, and nobody has ever dressed an ensemble of Eurotrash villain terrorist robbers better than Marilyn Vance. I mean, the outfit that Hans Gruber is wearing, and not only that, Die Hard is probably the only movie ever made where they actually name check Savile Row designers as part of the plot. When Hans Gruber says to Mr. Takagi, "Nice suit, John Phillips, London. I have two like it myself." I mean, come on. I want to imagine that Marilyn Vance suggested putting that actually in the movie. That's how cool she is.
Yeah, and well, she's the coolest in my books now with that, with this Captain Amazing thing. Again, first thing I'm going to be hanging up. And by the way, special thanks to Petey, who's been sending in some super chat badges into the live chat. Thank you so much for that super chat, Petey. All right. Listen, guys, we got some things to get here today. We actually have some topics we need to talk about here today. But before we do, just a couple of house cleaning items. First of all, obviously, you guys know plug time, but we spent the better part of the last year working on a documentary about movie trailers. If you're a film fan, you know all about the importance of movie trailers. And so we made this documentary called Movie Trailers, A Love Story, and it is available right now, worldwide, wherever you live on the planet. You can get it right now at www.vimeo.com/on-demand/movie trailers. You can go and get it now. Or if you happen to live in the US or the UK, you also have the option of getting it on Amazon, and it is available there on Amazon as well. Just go to Amazon and search for Movie Trailers, A Love Story, and you will be able to find it there. So thank you to all of you guys who have already checked it out and sent in some great feedback. So thank you so much, guys. It is an honor and a privilege. All right, guys. With that down, let's get into some stuff here. Now, before we get into our main topics, we're going to start here with an off the top, and that is this. Rob, you'll remember that, during the Mandalorian Season 2 finale, there happened to be a little bit of a post-credit scene that announced the Book of Boba Fett, right? Which caused a little bit of confusion amongst the fan base. Some people thought, wait a minute, so is this replacing Mandalorian, or is Boba Fett now the Mandalorian in Mandalorian Season 3 and it's going to follow him? Are there going to be two separate things? Is the Book of Boba Fett going to be one thing and Mandalorian Season 3 another thing? Now, we had always just assumed that it was going to be two separate shows, but there was some confusion, and now John Favreau has come up and cleared up the confusion. John Favreau was being interviewed, and he cleared it up. Now, this is from Entertainment Weekly, and they wrote the following. Appearing on Good Morning America on Monday, the showrunner and director explained, this is John Favreau, explained that the Book of Boba Fett will indeed be a standalone spin-off series, not some sort of replacement for The Mandalorian Season 3. To which everybody breathed a huge sigh of relief, even though both titles will premiere in December of 2021. Tamura Morrison, who plays Boba Fett, and Ming-Na Wen, who plays Fennec, will star. In addition, Robert Rodriguez, who directed that big action-filled John Wick Boba Fett episode, will also be joining as one of the new producers as well. And he'll probably end up directing one or two of the episodes as well. John Favreau said the following. We didn't want to spoil the surprise during the big Kathy Kennedy announcement of all the shows during the Investor Day earlier this month. So they let me keep this one a secret. Favreau says. So this is actually separate from The Mandalorian Season 3. But what we didn't say in the announcement is the next show, is the next show coming up. What Kathy called the next chapter is going to be the Book of Boba Fett. So the Book of Boba Fett is going to come just before Mandalorian Season 3. And then we go into production right after that on The Mandalorian. Back with the main character that we all know and love. Pretty soon following that, there's a lot of Star Wars content coming out. I think they announced 10 projects. I think this will be 11, and on and on and on. So, Rob, it was important that they clarify this and that they clear this up, because that was causing some confusion for some people about what this was. Yes, some, and what it was going to be. John Favreau puts it to rest. We're getting both Mandalorian Season 3. We're getting the Book of Boba Fett. That's coming. Rob, why was it important for John Favreau to clarify this? And do you think this is a good move to have this as two separate shows? What do you think?
Well, first of all, based on my Twitter feed, and I was trying to explain to someone, I said, in the history of the entertainment medium, nobody has taken a television show, much less a television show that has driven almost 100,000 subscribers to a new streaming service, and replaced it with another show, no matter who stars in it. What you do is you make a second show. That's why, and people were coming after me going, well, how do you know? I'm like, it's common sense. And as somebody who's looked at the entertainment industry most of my life, I've just never seen it happen before. And while I understand, because the show is called The Mandalorian, how they could replace it with Boba Fett. I understand how people could think that. But, I mean, there's no way that they would ever do something like that. If you have a successful show, you spin it off. You know, you turn Cheers into Frasier. and that's what you do. And you've got Cheers and Frasier, and then Frasier runs long. Cheers ends, Frasier keeps going. I mean, that's just how the business works. And I knew this, the way they've structured it as chapters, I think it's pretty interesting. Somebody pointed out to me, if you go back, the 8-part structure of The Mandalorian now being 16 parts mirrors things that were going on in the Clone Wars and in Rebels. And I think that this is a great idea. And I'm so happy that obviously they're very in tune with social media. John Favreau came out here and put the kibosh on that, because he can't go on social media and say that, because he represents the biggest franchise in the world. Maybe the second biggest after the MCU. And I think it's great that he did this. I'm very excited bringing Robert Rodriguez on, somebody who's really pioneered doing low-budget digital effects to very great effect. I mean, he's been at the forefront of that digital technology with cameras and such. It makes sense that they're bringing him on as a producer. These people, they know what they're doing. They've got their bases covered. They know exactly what's up. And I read, as part of the investor meeting, which I didn't catch up on, that all of these the shows, Mandalorian, Boba Fett, the Rangers of the New Republic or whatever, there's that, and Ahsoka Tano, that all of these shows are going to be sort of intertwined, and they are going to do a big crossover, an Avengers-like crossover.
Well, don't go too much into that, because we have to cover that a little bit later.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just, I read that in the investor, recap of the investor meeting. These people, I mean, for the very first time, I'm more excited about Star Wars than I've ever been, because they're really building out a mythology, and they know exactly what they're doing. And you know me, John, I'm all about authorship. If I know that the people behind the show that I'm watching are on top of it and are making my investment in their work worthwhile, I'm all in. And I am all in this new era of Star Wars.
Let me ask you this. Even now that we know that these are two separate series, and, the Book of Boba Fett, it's going to be a limited series. We've known that for weeks, even before the show, that it was going to be a limited series. The Double B Studio just sent in a super chat badge. Thank you for that, Double B. Let's just ask this flat out. Is it a good idea for Boba Fett, who has always been a popular, yet very much a secondary kind of non-entity in many ways? He had very few lines in the original series and all that kind of stuff. Is it a good idea in general, Rob, for them to be doing a Boba Fett series at all?
I would say never in the history of entertainment have I seen one still frame. And that was at the very end of the episode of The Mandalorian. I know, because I made the still frame myself, and so did many other people, of Boba Fett sitting on the throne in the Jabba the Hutt's old palace with Fennec Shand taking a swig of her blue Romulan ale. that image alone, I'm like, oh, I want to see that show.
Where she's like sitting all badass on the edge of the throne and all that kind of stuff.
I think that more than any other thing, any other Boba Fett image, whether he's nodding his head, in Jedi or whatever, that proves to me that Boba Fett has been in hibernation. He's been waiting for 40 years since being introduced, maybe 42 years if you want to go back to the holiday special. Boba Fett wasn't even real. He was only animated back then. But for 42 years, Boba Fett has been lying in wait. And now he is going to come and he's going to take over the underworld of the entire Star Wars universe and is going to kick ass. Limited series, be damned. I'll bet you in 10 years, we're going to see the Book of Boba Fett chapter or Book 11.
Well, we'll see. They're saying it's a limited series for now, but I mean, they could. Sure. Hey, they also said Big Little Lies was going to be a 1-season limited series, and we saw how that turned out.
Okay,
and by the
John,
way,
the over and under 50%. I'll give you 50% that Boba Fett is more than 1 season.
Under, but not by a lot. But not by a lot. I mean, I think they very purposely said it's going to be a limited series. So, but I do think there's a chance. Anyway, by the way, again, Greg D sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thanks for that, Greg. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this now that John Favreau has clarified Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian Season 3 are indeed 2 separate things. One is not replacing the other. How do you guys feel about that? Jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down and out of the way, let's move now into our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit. And then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get into main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Zayn, who writes, "Hey, John, I just read that the Russo brothers are working on a project based off a graphic novel called The Electric State. It's also being reported that Millie Bobby Brown will star in it. Adding to that, McFeely and Marcus will write the adaptation. The premise sounds like a Spielberg-esque, a boy, girl, and his pet adventure story. Kind of does a little bit. I'm excited for this. What are your thoughts?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, the Russo brothers are getting ready to direct. I think this might be the first thing they're directing. I can't remember. They've been producing a lot. They might have directed something else, but they're going to be directing this, and it's going to be starring Millie Bobby Brown. This comes to us from the folks over at Deadline, who tell us a little bit about it, called The Novel, based on the novel it's going to be. The novel is a reimagined, low-tech, apocalyptic mid-1990s vision of the American West with stunning visual artwork. Set in an alternative universe, it tells the story of a teenage girl, played by Millie Bobby Brown, who realizes that a strange but sweet robot who comes to her has actually been sent by her missing brother. She and the robot set out to find the brother in an imaginative world of humans mixing with all manner of robots, uncovering a grand conspiracy theory in the process. So that comes to us again from Deadline. And this sounds pretty good to me, actually. Now, look. I have been waiting desperately, Rob, I'm not going to lie to you, to really love something that the Russo brothers have done. I'm really been waiting to love something again, because once they finished with the MCU, they did got their Agbo production company really up and running. They did that one with Chadwick Boseman. What was it called? 21 Bridges or something like that. It was not good. It was just not good. Then they did the Netflix movie Extraction, which a lot of people really liked. I thought it was a very poor movie with some good action in it. I mean, I thought it had some great action, particularly that car chase scene. But overall, I thought it had some the movie as a whole, I thought was garbage. I am very much looking forward to this, though. And them having Millie Bobby Brown in it, I think is a step forward. I appreciated her a lot in that Enola Holmes series they did on Netflix. I thought she did a pretty good job with that. So I'm looking forward to this. Rob, you hear about this new series that they're doing. What do you take? What's your take on this?
Sounds cool to me. I mean, a modern steampunk Western with robots and Millie Bobby Brown, she's a fantastic actress. And like Anya Taylor-Joy, I see her as being somebody we're going to be watching. We'll probably watching till I'm long shuffled off this mortal coil. And I like to see the emergence of new talent and taking on these projects. And she's taking on producer roles and she's working with good people. So I would say that someone is running her career correctly. So it's exciting.
All right, guys. Question is, what do you think about the sounds of this with Millie Bobby Brown joining up the Russo brothers? By the way, we kind of glanced over, Rob, the fact that the writers of Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, they're going to be writing this thing, at least the adaptation of it too. What do you guys think about this? Where are your expectations level for this? Jump on down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move into main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Marcus Penna, who writes, "Hey, John, U.S. Congress just passed the $900 billion stimulus package, and included in that is an upwards of $15 billion in funding for the movie theaters and other live entertainment venues. Is it a little too late? What are your thoughts?" Okay, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, one of the big topics of conversation in our movie spheres for the last year has obviously been the survival prospects or lack thereof of the movie theater industry. We talked just a couple of weeks ago about the fact that AMC has announced that they're probably going to run out of money in January. They need like $700 million pronto to get this, to keep everything afloat and keep things moving. We've seen since that time, Rob, we've seen Disney say that they are committed to theatrical releases of a bunch of their films. We just heard actually the Russo brothers. This is something we didn't talk about in the Russo brothers story. The Russo brothers' new movie is going to be done with Universal, but they made Universal agree that it will have a regular traditional theatrical release. That was something that the Russo brothers insisted on, which applause to them for doing that. So we're seeing all the backlash on Warner Brothers, all that kind of stuff. It's given some people like myself who love the theater going experience just a glimmer of hope, maybe not a ton of it, but at least a glimmer of hope. Well, now there has been this stimulus package that has come out, and a bunch of money is being dedicated to movie theaters and other live event sort of things. This comes to us from Movie Maker magazine, who writes, "The $900 billion stimulus deal reached in Congress on Sunday includes roughly $15 billion in aid for struggling movie theaters, live venues, and other cultural institutions, a lifeline for businesses shut down for months by COVID-19. The so-called Save Our Stages provision includes $15 billion in dedicated funding for live venues, independent movie theaters, and cultural institutions. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer said in a statement, more help is on the way, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said, as he announced the deal on the Senate floor." Rob, you and I have talked before about whether or not movie theaters should be getting any type of aid. And both, I believe both you and I believe the answer to that is yes. This is not a situation where like movie theaters were just badly run and they ran themselves in the ground. This was a global, unforeseen pandemic that shut everything down, and the economy of movie theaters and how many people they employ and the auxiliary businesses connected with them, which you often point out so accurately. This is not a small amount of money. Now, it should be made clear here that $15 billion is not all going to the movie theaters. They're going to get a portion of that. But it seems like it's definitely going to be enough money for like AMC, that seems to be in the worst situation out of all the movie theaters. It seems like it's going to be more than enough to keep them afloat and running, at least for the foreseeable future, however limited that is. Rob, obviously for the movie theaters, this is good news, but is it too little too late? Is this something that could keep the theaters afloat at least for a while longer? I don't know. What's your interpretation of this? How do you see it?
Well, I look at movie theaters there's a number of things happening here. Movie theaters provide something that's been a cultural touchstone for Americans for over 100 years. They employ people from, as we've talked about, not just the people that work at the movie theaters, but the people that supply the movie theaters, the people that work in restaurants and things that are around the movie theaters, the parking structures that allow you to park your car near a movie theater. There's a huge ecosystem of businesses and economic impact that are part of all of this. And I think that, like any other business, I think having stimulus like this is important. And a lot of people think, oh, Hollywood needs to be bailed out. Well, aside from the glamour and the glitz and all the stuff we hear about celebrities, movie theaters, exhibition is a business. There's no red carpets if you run a movie theater unless somebody decides to rent your theater out for a red carpet event. These are businesses with not big margins that a lot of people, a lot of independent theater owners are running, and of course the chains, that's their job. And I think they're as valid as any other business to get this kind of stimulus, and I think it's important. And while it might not solve everyone's problems, maybe it'll keep a business that everybody likes and hopes that will come back.
Yeah, and I think that's the key here is that this game, while things have definitely not looked good for the theaters lately, especially with the Warner Brothers announcement, this again, I don't want to be misinterpreted. I'm not saying this is good. This is the turning point. Everything's going to go the movie theater's way now. I'm not saying that in the least.
No.
Don't misinterpret me. But with the amount of backlash that Warner Brothers has gotten from the entire industry, with the upcoming court cases being brought against them by not only Legendary, but some directors as well, with the fact that Disney seems to, at least for now, saying they're still committed to putting out theatrical experiences, with the Russo brothers having Universal commit to a traditional theatrical thing, and now with this lifeline, this financial lifeline to keep them afloat, I just call it some potential hope. Not that this fixes everything, not that this means 2 years from now we're still going to have the movie theaters, but I think this gives it more hope than it did the other day. We'll have to see how it ultimately turns out. Question is, guys, what do you think about this? I think this is good news for the theaters. How do you guys feel about it? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Jordan Presley. And Jordan Presley writes, as you know, Disney announced that some of the new Disney Plus Star Wars shows, such as Ahsoka and Rangers of the New Republic shows, would culminate in a crossover event. I was just thinking that maybe this event could revolve around Grand Admiral Thrawn, especially since Ahsoka is still looking for him and he could serve as a multi-show level threat. What are your thoughts? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yes, we all know in the Ahsoka, the Jedi episode of Mandalorian Season 2, there was a big name drop. And that was Ahsoka asking, where is Grand Admiral Thrawn? Where is he? Now, one of the things that we know is that Thrawn might just be more than Mara Jade, more than anybody else. Grand Admiral Thrawn is probably the most famous, popular, hyped about Star Wars characters to never have appeared in any of the actual Star Wars movies. It's probably Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I want to propose that in the upcoming shows, Rangers of the New Republic, Mandalorian Season 3, and Ahsoka Tano, I want to propose that Grand Admiral Thrawn may actually be, now I don't know this is not based on any insider information, this is simply me from a speculation point of view, but why I believe we are going to see Grand Admiral Thrawn is ultimately really the Thanos of this upcoming set of shows, that he is going to be the big bad guy threat. Now, just to bring it all into context here, Disney Plus, this comes to us from CBR. Disney Plus is developing 2 new live-action series based on the Star Wars universe, Ahsoka Tano and Rangers of the New Republic, that are, of course, going to be connected with and running at the same time as Mandalorian. The interconnected series will take place in the same time period as The Mandalorian and will culminate in a climactic story event, according to Star Wars head Kathy Kennedy, who announced the series at Disney Investors Day in 2020. While no casting details are announced for Rangers of the New Republic, I think obviously Cara Dune is going to be one of those characters, but we'll find out for sure. No casting details were announced for Rangers of the New Republic. Rosario Dawson will reprise her role as Ahsoka for the series. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are attached as producers for both series. All right, so we know that's the case. All right, we know that these are interconnected, all this kind of stuff. We know that Grand Admiral Thrawn was brought in and mentioned and all that kind of stuff. But Rob, it's not just these things. what we have been seeing and watching, and I believe we got a really good look at this at the Disney Plus Investors Day announcements, is that Disney has really chosen to model this new Star Wars universe after the MCU. I believe they've decided to model it after the MCU. And even like outlets like Variety are now kind of pointing out the fact that Disney is in fact moving this way, that Star Wars is becoming more like the MCU. These post-credit stingers leading into a new spin-off series, everything interconnected. This is the way that Lucasfilm, this is the way, no pun intended, but this is the way that Lucasfilm is going to be proceeding forward with their Star Wars universe now. A giant interconnected, all things happen at the same time, depending on which story we're being told. But particularly in the case of Boba Fett, Mandalorian, Rangers, Ahsoka Tano, all that. Now you need, if you're going to have that type of an interconnected story, Rob, you need a big bad guy. There is no bigger bad guy outside of Vader or the Emperor or what have you that you could have come in and do this other than the great Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now think about this for a second. We saw in Mandalorian, Mr. Kim, Paul Lee, the X-Wing fighter pilot, who, when he was talking to Cara Dune, he said, there's something going on out here, like something deeper. And it wasn't, I don't believe he was just talking about the Moff Gideon stuff either. There's something going on out here. When you think about something along the lines of Rangers of the New Republic, Grand Admiral Thrawn is a terrific foil for a property like that. We already know that Grand Admiral Thrawn is going to be probably the main impetus of the Ahsoka show, since Ahsoka introduced by saying, where's Grand Admiral Thrawn? We know that's her motivation. But even when you look at Mandalorian Season 3, Rob, think about this. Mandalorian Season 3, they're going to be, obviously it's going to have a lot to do with Mandalore. Well, the Empire isn't around anymore. I often wondered during the show when Bo-Katan was saying, we need to take back Mandalore. I remember thinking to myself, take it back from who? Exactly. Is it a remnants of the Empire that are still there? Because the Empire in itself doesn't exist properly anymore. Is it remnants of the Empire? If so, could they be remnants that are still overseen by Grand Admiral Thrawn? That could tie that in. And Grand Admiral Thrawn himself, Rob, becomes the perfect Thanos, if you will, for this corner, talking about the Mandalorian era, this corner of the Star Wars universe. It seems like Admiral Thrawn could be that guy. So I think there's a lot of evidence here, Rob, pointing towards that Disney is moving Lucasfilm into an MCU model, that they are setting up one big bad guy, and I think that's going to be Thrawn, at least for these Mandalorian era shows. Rob, you see all this, you hear all this. What do you think? Do you think Grand Admiral Thrawn could be the big bad guy? Do you think all these shows need one big bad guy? How do you think they're going to handle this?
Well, I mean, look, if you think about it, Grand Admiral Thrawn would be the representative. He would be the figurehead of the entire empire. Since this takes place, or the remnants of the empire, whatever the remnants of the empire are doing, we don't have Darth Vader anymore. We don't have Palpatine anymore. We need a big bad, and a big bad that's in control of the remnants of the empire is formidable indeed. And the New Republic is scrambling around to build a New Republic. Boba Fett's probably going to try and solidify some kind of criminal empire. The Mandalorian and Bo-Katan and that ilk is going to want to retake Mandalore. So somehow a big bad, and I think Grand Admiral Thrawn is the perfect foil for all of this, is going to be involved in some way, shape, or form with all of these characters. So I do think, because he's after all trying to reestablish a government. And I think it's a great idea that we're doing this. And for me, Star Wars is based on the old pulps, the old serials, and whether it was Flash Gordon, whether it was Kurosawa samurai movies, I think the interconnected nature of Star Wars is where it's always supposed to have been at. Because if you were a Star Wars fan when there was no movies, there were books, there were comics, whether you were reading Rogue Squadron over here or the Thrawn trilogy or the Han Solo books. I mean, the Star Wars universe is indeed a universe. So just like our universe, like you live in the United States, there's stories happening in New York and LA and Austin and San Francisco. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and yet we're all Americans. So the Star Wars universe is going to have a lot of stuff happening all over the place, and it's going to be really interesting to watch. And by the way, I think this is the exact way to handle this franchise, because you know what the Star Wars universe now has? It has Dave Filoni, John Favreau, and now Robert Rodriguez. And you've got these three guys. Can you imagine what it's like to hang out with those three guys in a production meeting? Like, I swear to God, like I said on the show last week, I am sure, like, if I were them, I would have a room where their assistants have gathered all the Star Wars toys and all the figures that exist in every scale. So you could have gaming miniatures all the way up to the largest toys that you could fit action figures in. And all they would do is like design plot lines and shots, three grown men. What if we did this shot? What if we had this, and setting up with their iPhones, taking pictures, and they were just sending all that to the previs department and go, make this happen. I mean, it's got to be the greatest job on the planet.
Do you, I can't remember if we've talked about, do you watch any of that John Favreau's chef show on Netflix?
Yeah, that's great too.
He actually had an episode with him and Robert Rodriguez where they were at Robert Rodriguez's house making like stone oven based pizzas and stuff like that. It was a great episode. But let me ask you this, Rob, because you and I had this discussion before about whether we could see John Favreau as an executive, as a guy running Lucasfilm, right? There's a great line, I think it was in Pirates of the Caribbean, that said, if you command one ship, you're a captain. If you command two or more ships, you're an admiral. We now have John Favreau here. I'm just wondering if your position may change at all now. Now that we see John Favreau is literally now an admiral. He is running now an entire section of the Star Wars worlds. He is now overseeing Boba Fett. He's overseeing Mandalorian. He's running and overseeing Ahsoka Tano. He's going to be overseeing the Rangers of the New Republic. I'm just wondering, because I know you thought as more of a creative that really wouldn't be a job for him, and you raised some good points, but I'm just wondering, as we're seeing all this unfold and he is really more of an admiral now than anything else, has your position on that changed? Could you now maybe see him as the head of Lucasfilm a little bit more, or has your position not changed on that?
No, because what he gets to do now is look, the fact that his creative pool is now getting up to be a lake and maybe eventually will be an ocean, I think he's still being a creative. What he wants to do, and I can't speak for John Favreau, but he gets to make stuff. You know what he doesn't have to do? Deal with investors' calls. Like, he'll show up and do his presentation, but he gets to every day go to work and make things. He does not want to deal with the corporate. I'm sure maybe he'll weigh in on marketing, but he wants to be a filmmaker. And he's working with other filmmakers and dreaming stuff up, and he knows he gets to work in different genres. I mean, the Rangers of the New Republic is essentially it's a cop show. It's a cop show. Then he's going to make his Boba Fett show, which is a criminal show. It's a show about the underworld, or Boba Fett and Fennec Shand doing whatever they're going to do. So that's their criminal show. And he's working in multiple, the Mandalorians, they're Western, and then whatever else they're going to do. So he's working in multiple genres. And what he's become is more like a Stephen J. Cannell or a Shonda Rhimes, or he's becoming a figurehead that's creating, and he's going to be writing and directing. And he's not like, he might have a deal with Netflix or CBS, but he doesn't want to run the network. He wants to make cool shows.
I still think he's going to do it. I think he's going to look at Kevin Feige and see that Kevin Feige gets to do both. He gets to be the creative guy in charge, and maybe not write the scripts.
Not a writer or director.
No, you're right. You're right. That's the big difference. You're absolutely right about that. Is the big difference. I still think he's a prime candidate. But question is, guys, what do you think about all this? Do you think that Grand Admiral Thrawn, I mean, they're clearly going to be crossing over all these shows. Do you think Grand Admiral Thrawn makes sense to be the big bad guy? What do you guys think about that? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move into main topic number 4. And our fourth main topic today gets submitted to us by Val. And Val writes, Wonder Woman 1984's international theatrical debut, which it has debuted in a lot of international markets, has unfortunately disappointed. In China, it made just $18.8 million with an overseas complete total of $38.5 million. It is pretty clear that Wonder Woman 84 is a victim of the winter's COVID-19 spike and the renewed lockdowns happening worldwide. It may make its money in the domestic market, but I'm highly doubtful. What are your thoughts, and what will WB do going forward, especially as it relates to HBO Max? All right, thanks for sending that in, man. And yeah, this isn't a great sign. Now, you guys know I really liked the first Wonder Woman movie. I have not liked the trailers for Wonder Woman 84 all that much, but I maintained my high level of expectations because I just believe in Patty Jenkins. If Patty Jenkins is the director, I believe in it, and I'm going to give it all the benefit of the doubt. Now, a bunch of people have seen it internationally. We've had our own viewers internationally writing in and saying that they love Wonder Woman 84. A lot of them saying this is even better than the first one. A lot of the critics have watched it and have really enjoyed it at this point. I'm looking forward to watching it later this week myself. So I can't wait to see it. By all accounts, the movie turned out in typical Patty Jenkins fashion really, really well. Unfortunately, it's not doing great internationally. Now, you can obviously point at the fact that there's COVID. No doubt. That is the main culprit here. But even in a market like China, yes, it made $18.8 million, and yes, it had a lot to do with COVID. The problem is another movie made double of what Wonder Woman did. So there are people going to the movies in China, at least, and internationally. They just really weren't all that taken with going to see Wonder Woman. This comes to us from Variety, who writes, Wonder Woman 84 grossed just $18.8 million in China, almost half of the approximately $34 million haul of the Chinese action film The Rescue. Both films far underperformed against expectations. However, as the Chinese box office saw its lowest pre-Christmas weekend since 2014, despite the country's low level of coronavirus threat. That is, of course, from Variety. And Rob, I look at this, and my first reaction is, okay, yeah, Wonder Woman made $18.8 million in China. There's a pandemic. Nobody worry. The one part to me that was slightly worrying, though, was the fact that there was another movie, granted a local movie, a Chinese movie, an actioneer, that made double of what Wonder Woman did. So there are people in China going to the movies. There just wasn't as many people interested in seeing Wonder Woman 84. Now, I don't know if that has to do with the fact that, like me, maybe people in the Chinese market weren't all that thrilled with the trailers. The first Wonder Woman movie didn't do all that spectacularly in China either, so there's that as well. Ultimately, I still think this is a coronavirus thing, although it's unfortunate to see that another movie did so much better than Wonder Woman at the same time. I'm still excited to see this movie, Rob. I don't know about you, but anyway, you see these numbers. What's your first reaction to that? And if you're an executive at Warner Brothers right now, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's... with the Chinese market, you can never really tell what's going to happen. Obviously, the movie has opened soft, about half of what the original Wonder Woman did in China, I think. But remember, the world is different now as well. And even trying to get your enthusiasm up to go see these films it's a crapshoot now. I mean, what are people going to care about? It's hard to say. And especially when you're dealing with the Chinese market, you can never be assured necessarily of anything. You can only assume and project based on what happened before. And I think that maybe they just misinterpreted or the Chinese audience's enthusiasm for Wonder Woman. Maybe after what's happened, people wanted more reassurance of domestic, going to see a native Chinese film. That's what people wanted to see. I don't know. But I just think that, look, the rollout of this movie was always going to be hampered. You can't expect the movie to have made anywhere near, because theaters aren't at full capacity. And it'll be interesting to see how this is the great experiment, John. Day and date, how is this going to do theatrically in foreign markets? Can they make $500 million from this movie in foreign territories? That could be a win. If they could make $500 million off this movie foreign and still release day and date, that could definitely be the kind of thing that the movie industry needs. This movie did very well in Latin America. We'll see what happens with that. And it's going to be, I just don't know. I'm looking at this closely because I'm very curious to see where this is all going to wind up.
Yeah, I think there's a Deadline raised up a really good point about this too. Like for me, I think aside the elephant in the room is the pandemic. That is the obvious elephant in the room. But why did it not even do half as well as another film in China? And there's a couple of other things there. Deadline raised, to me, I think it's poor marketing. Because Rob, despite the fact how much I love Patty Jenkins and I like the first movie, the trailers and the marketing campaign for this movie did nothing to get you and I excited about it.
No.
So
and yeah.
No, yeah. So I just think that's got to be taken into consideration. Deadline raised a really good point as well. Oh, and by the way, special thank you, Chris Hunt, for sending in that super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, Chris. On top of that, Deadline raises the point that everybody knows you can just pirate this movie in about a week. This thing is going to be put on live streaming, and everybody around the rest of the world where HBO Max doesn't exist and all that kind of stuff, they all know because it's just going to be streaming. The amount of opportunity to pirate this movie is going to be bountiful. Yeah. A house of plenty, Rob, will be the treasure chests of our digital pirates. And so there's a lot of interesting things working to get it. But again, we've used this phrase a lot, Rob, we're in uncharted territory. This is the type of situation that nobody in Hollywood has ever dealt with before, and everybody's just trying to wing it and kind of figure out how this is going to work. But I do know that they were hoping to see better than 18 million in China. They knew they weren't going to make 50 million in China opening weekend, but I know they were wanting to make a lot more than 18.8, even in the midst of a pandemic.
I think there's something else, and this might be a little weird for me to say, but the idea that this movie's set in 1984 and a lot of the marketing toward this film is very American-centric. Like the idea of there's a scene in a shopping mall where there's an action scene. It's the 80s, but it's very American 80s. And perhaps they shouldn't have leaned so heavily into the actual time period it takes place in, because the first Wonder Woman wasn't called Wonder Woman World War II. And a lot of the marketing has been built around the fact that this movie takes place in the 80s. Using New Order and showing all this iconography and fashion from the 80s and making 80s jokes about fanny packs and clothes. And maybe they should have just called it something else that might have had more play around the rest of the world. The same way that, other movies have been retitled. We got The Road Warrior, but in the rest of the world, it was called Mad Max 2. I don't know, maybe they have retitled the movie somewhere like that. But I think one of the problems that I had with the marketing, I think you had, was that the trailer didn't hook us from an intellectual standpoint. Like, okay, we know Wonder Woman's coming back, but what is this movie actually about? She fights Cheetah. I'm like, well, okay, Kristen Wiig is not exactly the most formidable opponent I've ever seen on camera. And Pedro Pascal's Maxwell Lord, what's he actually doing? Whereas World War I and the Amazonians, that's something you can wrap your head around and go, okay, I get it. But I think part of the marketing with this movie was what's happening in it other than Wonder Woman's back and she's in a shopping mall and she's on Mack trucks or 18-wheelers are flipping over. I mean, there's nothing. The idea behind why I'm supposed to be excited about this movie, and apparently it's kind of what I've read. It's a soft reboot of the character. There's a lot of Jeff Johns' storytelling DNA in this, moving away from the original conception from Batman v Superman and Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman, to try and change her into something different. And maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, because I haven't seen the movie.
Well, guys, the question is, what do you think about that? How do you interpret these numbers? Again, obviously, how good can you expect any film to do in the midst of a big global pandemic? But should it have done that low? Should it have been doubled by another movie in that market? Who knows? Question is, guys, what do you think? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys, one last thing here. Breaking news, Rob.
Ooh.
Not surprising at all. But it's still huge. We've been expecting this. We've been talking about this for over a year, and it is now happening. Alan Horn, the high guru and high lord of all things movies at Disney,
wow, has
stepped down from his position as the chairman of Disney Pictures. Now, he has had a co-chairman for a while, Alan Bergman, but Alan Horn has stepped down. He has now just relegated himself to Chief Creative Officer of Disney Pictures. And now Alan Bergman who I guess has sort of been his protege in a way, is now the sole chairman of Disney Pictures overall. This is huge. Listen, a lot of people, when they want to talk about Disney Pictures and how it became the massive juggernaut in all of the movie industry, a lot of people will point to, you know, the resurgence of Star Wars with all of its billion-dollar films, obviously the MCU and what it accomplished, the glory of Pixar. But most of this stuff all came about under the leadership of Alan Horn. Alan Horn, who was Kevin Feige's boss, who is the boss of all the studios. Alan Horn, who Bob Iger went to many years ago, and when Alan Horn had already retired, Rob, Alan Horn had retired. He was on a beach in Tahiti, sipping Mai Tais, enjoying the sunset, enjoying the fruits of his labor. And Bob Iger said, I need you, Alan. I need you. Come run this movie division for us. And he said, okay. And he came out and he did it. And he just built the most massive movie juggernaut in the history of Hollywood in doing it. But we have said for over a year now, he wants to retire again. He's looking to step down and step out. And he's doing it apparently the same way Bob Iger did. Bob Iger stepped down as CEO. He kept his chairman position while all this transition happens. But you know, Bob Iger probably within the next year will step down from the chairman role as well. Alan Horn, it looks like he's following the same pattern. He's stepping into the chief creative officer. I guess he'll probably be there maybe for 6 months, I'm guessing, to probably just help smooth the transition, and then he will retire again. One of the best names, most important names, most influential names in the world of Hollywood, despite how much I hated the way he handled the James Gunn situation. That aside, he's one of the most influential, important guys in the movie industry, and it looks like he is beginning his well-deserved transition out to get back to that good retirement life that he gave up on to come back in and help Disney. Rob, this is huge. This is a huge thing. Like, Alan Horn is not always the name that everybody discusses and talks about, but his importance and what he has done to help shepherd and lead all of the Disney movie properties to where they are today it can't be overstated. Anyway, Rob, your quick thoughts here on what looks like to be the beginning of the transition of Alan Horn getting back to his well-deserved retirement. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a good thing. You know, Alan Horn has a great track record in Hollywood already, and he came over to Disney and certainly has a great track record there. And he goes out on top. And with the pandemic happening, I mean, Alan Horn's a movie maker, you know, and I'm sure it's like, you know what, with the business being disrupted, my job is done. I have my protege ready to take over. I need to go kick back. And like you said, I need some more Mai Tais. I got some family time I want to deal with. Who needs the aggravation? I certainly don't need it. I have nothing more to prove. I saw Endgame. I won.
I saw Endgame. I won. I love that. Now, what this does mean, though, is that, like, one of my predictions that, again, I had no insider information. I was just predicting and speculating. One of my prediction was I thought Alan Horn may have been grooming Kevin Feige to take over his role. It should have been obvious to people like me that he had his co-chairman in Alan Berg there ready to go. That should have been obvious, but I still really kind of thought he was grooming Kevin Feige. Maybe that's a role they see for Kevin Feige 5 or 10 years down the line from now. Who knows? But
I just don't think so, man. I'm like, Kevin Feige is having way too much fun. You know, the thing is, when somebody moves over to take over a studio, and they have a whole new set of responsibilities that, let's call them mundane. Would you rather be in charge of creating the Marvel Cinematic Universe and now the Marvel streaming universe, or would you want to have to deal with, I don't know, like the Disney parks and coordinating with the movies and this? I mean, there's a whole level of responsibility that is unfun when you're the executive, and you've got to be built that way. There's people that making movies is a pain in the ass. I mean, everybody thinks it's fun, but it's a complete pain in the ass. And what he's got is one movie to make. He's got the Marvel movies. It's not like he suddenly has to make like The English Patient. He's
right.
not going to do that, you know. And so he's in a sandbox, which is so much fun for him. Where all they have, he's got, before he gets bored, I'll bet you he's got another 25 years of the MCU planned out that he wants to make.
I don't know, man. I think you're underestimating the Look, you were just saying this about Alan Horn. I saw in game, I win. I mean, yeah, but a lot of like, you cannot underestimate the unmitigated drive of creative people and the unmitigated drive of success-oriented people. And once you reach the top of that mountain, you start looking for the next challenge. And for somebody like Kevin Feige, who has done what? He's already made the #1 box office film of all time. He's made the most powerful juggernaut in the history of the box office at the thing. He has set up this new era for streaming at Disney and all that kind of stuff. What does Disney now want to do? Especially when you look at Disney already trying to model Lucasfilm after the MCU and what he's done. I just think you can't underestimate the itch that somebody like Kevin Feige, who has accomplished everything to accomplish as his head of one division of a studio, and to take that and now be the guy who helps shepherd other leaders to unmitigated success for Pixar and for Disney Pictures and Disney Animation and Lucasfilm. And I just think 5 years from now, I think we might be surprised.
You know, you might be absolutely right. But I also think that it's what you just said about success-oriented people. The thing about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Kevin Feige, that's his. You know, people always look at it and go, that guy did it. That was his thing. If he were to run Disney, all he's doing is shepherding other people who have, I mean, Pixar already exists, Star Wars already exists, but Kevin Feige made the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's his. It's his creation. And in the history of cinema, when the history of cinema is written, Kevin Feige will go down as doing something nobody ever did. You know, he was the visionary after making 13 Marvel movies with other studios and figuring out, okay, here's how to do it right. He came in and literally changed Hollywood forever. And I'll tell you, in 100 years, nobody's going to care the names of anybody who ran a studio. Maybe Bob Iger, maybe people that ran, Louis B. Mayer will be remembered, but nobody's going to remember who ran studios. But people are going to remember Kevin Feige in 100 years. And I think, for doing what he's, I just think that, I mean, as a creative person, what he's doing is trailblazing, and running a studio is just, he'd be one in a long line of studio heads.
But dude, you're just saying this the opposite. Like, he's in a position that John Favreau would have, and you were saying that position would be no fun for Favreau because it's not being creative anymore. Kevin Feige is doing the business end of running that ship, and I think you need somebody who has proven that they can be a studio executive like Kevin Feige has. Now that's great. You now make Kevin Feige the head of all Disney Pictures. And can you imagine what a guy like him, what he could help if he implemented his own leader, which would probably be John Favreau, but if he was able to now place his own leaders over Lucasfilm, over all these divisions, and help them and facilitate them to do that. I mean, he goes from being in the Hall of Fame to being on Mount Olympus. I mean, I don't know. I just think it's too good to pass up.
I got to say, I got one more thing quickly to say. I was talking to a producer friend of mine that I've recently met, very powerful producer who has a great track record, especially over the last 20 years. And I was laboring under the false impression that this producer, like me, loves the creative process. I love being on set. I love being in the edit bay. I love getting in there and making things. And you know what he said to me? He said to me, I love the first third of the process. I love making the deals. I love putting the talent together. And I love watching this thing that I shepherded into existence flourish and become successful. My name's on it. He's like, I don't want to be on set. It's boring. You know, he's like, being in the edit bay, let me put the project together and then go to the premiere. Sure, he wants to weigh in, you know, but the process, so he's already carved out what he wants from the business. And that's his thing. And he's going to be constantly, I think these guys that are making movies, Favreau and Kevin Feige in his way, they're in exactly the places they want to be at. They have arrived. I don't think they have anywhere else they want to go.
I think you underestimate ambition, man. I think you underestimate their ambition. But
ambition could, but why does ambition have to lead to, like, for instance, if someone said to me, Rob, if you could run the Star Trek franchise for the rest of your life, but that's all you could ever do, I'd be like, I'm in. You know, and
but you say that not being in that position right now. Like if you were to ask yourself that question after 5 years of doing it and doing it better than anybody ever has, and you're kind of feeling, where's my challenge now? What's next? You might answer differently. Like if you were to ask me right now, hey John, you could direct a Star Wars show and do that for the rest of your life. If you were to ask me that right now, I'd be, hell yeah, of course so. Of course I would. But I just think, you know, we could have said the same thing about John Favreau earlier about just directing. He's happy being a director. He loves being a director. But now he got to be a showrunner. And now he's being the showrunner of multiple shows. And he just keeps expanding his profile. And I just think when you cannot underestimate the ambition and the itch for the next challenge that success-driven people like John Favreau, like Kevin Feige, that wanting to have the next giant mountain to climb, I just don't think you can underestimate it. But you may very well be right.
I just think that success doesn't always mean you're looking for something new. I think success can also mean that you get to this one place that you never dreamed of being, and like, I've arrived. You know, I think John Favreau and I think Kevin Feige, yeah, they might want to run studios, but I think in the position they're in right now, they're probably having more fun than they ever dreamed possible. They're making more money, they're having more success, and not just success in their industry, global recognition. You know, and I think that it's like, you could go run a studio, but I don't think you're going to have as much fun as you are right now.
I don't know. Favreau might have said the same thing to Favreau, just running one thing and then asking him if he can run a series of shows. But who knows? We're not in their heads. We'll have to see where this thing goes. But the big thing here, though, is just getting back to Alan Horn, guys. Big major thing. He is truly one of the icons in the industry, and it looks like he is now beginning his transition back to his well-deserved retirement. What do you guys think about that? Jump into the comment section below and leave us your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's now move on and start taking some of your live questions. If you want to send in a live comment or question, simply use the tip link that's near the top of the description of this video, or you can see it right down there, www.streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show, and of course, you'll be supporting the show at the same time. All right, let's hop over and start getting into it here, shall we? We're going to start things off here with Michael Getz. And Michael Getz writes, hey, John, I was wondering what the deal was with Venom 2 and Morbius. Morbius is slated for March 2021 and Venom for June 2021. Should we start to see marketing for these, especially Morbius? Is this a sign they might be moving? Could we see them going to streaming? We've talked about this before, Rob. I don't think I see either of them going to streaming. I don't see that happening. But I also don't know that they're going to be keeping their date. Look, Morbius is still 4 months away. It's still 4 months away. So I don't think we're in any position to judge whether or not, I don't think new marketing is even late at this point. The thing is still 4 months away. Plus, we've already had our first Morbius trailer. I still think March may be a little bit early, even with the vaccine here now. I still think March might be a little early. I think we're going to see both Morbius and Venom bumped a little bit. But I don't see either of them going straight to streaming. Maybe if Sony had its own big premium streaming platform, that might be a possibility. But as of right now, Morbius is still 4 months away. We've had the first trailer. I don't think there's anything for us to worry about or get excited about yet. Rob, what are your thoughts on that right now?
Well, yeah, you gotta take this with a grain of salt. This is a developing situation. We've got supply chain issues. We have distribution issues. You know, I read over the weekend that, you know, dipping dots, that like weird freeze-dried candy or some things you could see it you can buy at like outdoor malls. Do you know what those things are? Well, they're stored in dry ice. Yeah. So like dipping dot facilities that store those things. They were talking about how like dipping dots might be able to help the distribution of the vaccine because their food item, the dipping dots themselves, are held in like dry ice at the temperature that the vaccine needs to be stored at. So they might be able to repurpose dipping dots to hold their dry ice, however they store their stuff. And I'm like, because they have a problem. They have a distribution problem keeping the vaccine viable and getting it out to people. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. Like, imagine you can get your dipping dots and your vaccine at the same time.
It's like getting a lollipop after giving blood.
It's amazing. So, and I was like, I'm going to buy stock in dipping dots. But I think it's an unrolling situation. All I know is that, dude, I just want to see No Time to Die in IMAX. Come on, what's up?
What's that at? All right,
just
next
give it
up.
to me. I want it. Give it to me. I want it.
Give
in
it to
my
me now.
by April.
Next up, Albert J. Gonzalez writes, hello, loved your documentary. Thank you so much, Albert. I appreciate that. Surprised you didn't mention Edge of Tomorrow's trailer. Also, why did you decide not to be in it? Well, I mean, there was really, if you look at the chapters of the thing, there was really no point in bringing up Edge of Tomorrow. That really wasn't necessary. So, yeah, there's just nowhere that the Edge of Tomorrow trailer stuff fit into what it was we were discussing. I decided not to be in it because I wanted to kind of tell this story. The people who watch me see me all the time. They don't need me in the documentary. And I didn't need to just be in there and repeat things that I've said all the time anyway. And I didn't want the documentary to be or even perceived. Because listen, if I put myself in the documentary, there are going to be people out there who goes, oh, John Campea just made this documentary so he could put himself in it. So there was part of that. So number one, there was no need for me to be in it. There was other great people to be in it, like Robert Meyer Burnett. Number two, just the perception of making a movie just to put myself in it, which seems kind of cheesy to me. So I didn't want to do it. And yeah, the bottom line is there just wasn't any need. So anyway, Albert, thank you so much for watching my doc, man. I really, really appreciate it. All right. Anonymous viewer writes, John, clearly this was a big FU from John and Dave to Ryan and Kathleen. You know the guy Dave credits for getting him into the live action and the woman who has to approve everything and write the checks. Isn't it obvious? I swear some fans are exhausting. I mean, yeah, this has been one of the interesting things, Rob, has been in the midst of all the success and everything that's coming. There are still people who desperately try. Now, listen, I am I have talked many times in this show about all the failings that I think Kathleen Kennedy has had as the head of Lucasfilm. I've talked a lot about them. I've talked about them exhaustively. I still think she's one of the greatest producers of all time, but I think she has been found wanting as being a studio head. That's just me. But people then try to create a fantasy land where you can blame her for the failures, and we do, but you don't want to give her any credit for the success. But you can't do that. John Favreau has very explicitly talked about how this show wouldn't have been possible without her. It's just that simple. Kathy Kennedy, Rob, gets hundreds of pitches for Star Wars content across her desk every day from some of the biggest filmmakers in the world and some of the smallest filmmakers in the world. And she has to decide what looks like it has potential. She saw John Favreau's amidst 100 other pitches. She saw Favreau's and saw the potential in it. She brought in Favreau for a meeting. She realized they were on the same page. And then as Favreau tells the story, she said, you know what would be great for this, John? I want to hook you up with Dave Filoni. I want you to work with Dave Filoni on this. I think Dave has something that he can bring to something like this that'll work very well. And Favreau said, sounds great. And Favreau took on Filoni as his Padawan, I suppose, in many ways. And they went ahead and made the show. And I'm sorry, I know there are a lot of people out there who are incredibly against Kathy Kennedy, and I have my criticisms of her. But you cannot acknowledge the success of Mandalorian, and you cannot acknowledge the exciting place that Star Wars is in right now with all the things upcoming, and not tip your cap to Kathleen Kennedy. Acknowledge, hey man, she brought us Mandalorian. She greenlit this thing. She put this thing together for them, and you got to give her the credit. I don't know, Rob, you see this still probably unfold all the time in your chats, and we see this online all the time. What's your position on this right now?
Look, I've been a staunch Kathleen Kennedy supporter since the very beginning. And what we see as fans and what we see out in our world is a fundamental lack of understanding of how the business of Hollywood tends to work, because we're on the outside of it. It's very difficult. We're very much a goal or results oriented people. We look at the results and how we respond to them, and we base our opinions on those results. How did the finished product hit us? Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes into getting that finished product, whether it's good or bad, in front of our eyes. And, I've always said Kathleen Kennedy made a lot of really interesting moves, hiring, whether it was Lord and Miller, whether it was Gareth Edwards, whether it was, a lot of the people that were working on these projects that it later turned out to be problematic. But in the beginning, she was doing some innovative stuff. It didn't work out that way because there was more pressure than ever before. She had Disney up on high going, we just spent $4 billion. We're expecting a $20 billion return over a certain amount of time. You better perform, babe. And she's trying to make things innovative and new and unique. And she expects, because she's used to working with world-class filmmakers, that when you hire them, they deliver. They understand they're working for the studios. And people had different ways of working. Like Lord and Miller, we found out from their 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street movies, they do a lot of improv. They go off book. And you're dealing with a guy like Lawrence Kasdan, who's known for his writing, who's also a director. And he's like, this isn't the script that we greenlit. And there's other factors happening that were, and Kathleen Kennedy, man, she had to make tough choices. I look at her and go, to get rid of directors as far into that movie as they were, had to be one of the most painful decisions any executive ever had to make. To have to spend more money to bring in a director and to pull that ship out of sinking in wherever it was going to sink, and to make Solo a movie that was palatable. I think the reason that movie didn't succeed was because not of Kathleen Kennedy. It was because the whole idea of a young Han Solo movie so close to seeing the real Han Solo was a mistake. The idea it was a mistake. So anyway, and you could blame her for everything, but like you just said, The Mandalorian and what's going on with Star Wars right now is the most exciting thing that's happened to the franchise since the announcement of The Phantom Menace, and it's working. It's working. Mandalorian toys are selling. How many Baby Yoda toys have they sold? It's all working, and you know what? Got to give her credit, because moving forward, Star Wars is going to be incredibly successful. Look at those numbers on Disney Plus. Those subscriber numbers are like, that's their future, and she's building it. So we, as fans, are dismissing her without really understanding the holistic nature of what's going on over at Disney.
Yeah, and again, I think one of the things a lot of people have to keep in mind is that, if 50 other people had been the head of Lucasfilm when John Favreau sent in his pitch for Mandalorian, 45 of them could have shuffled it off and said, a Western gunslinger thing with a Mandalorian who's not Boba Fett. I mean, I think 45 out of 50 other people who could have been the head of thing might have said, okay, look at that, and then just thrown it aside and moved on to another pitch.
Yep.
And you got to give credit. If it was not for everybody wants to pretend otherwise. If it were not for Kathy Kennedy, there would not be a Mandalorian show. It's just that simple. And, John Favreau is the one who gives her all the credit in the world. And anyway, I think that's something got paid. But I'm still very critical of Kathy Kennedy for a lot of the other things.
And, if I could say one more thing about this, the Disney princesses have been at the heart of their business for over 30 years.
Yeah.
Ariel, Belle, the girls in Frozen.
See, I know this because one of Anne's main responsibility at Hasbro when she was there was she was the person who oversaw all the Disney princess stuff. So yeah, it was incredibly core to their business.
So yeah, so the idea that you're going to bring in a strong female lead into Star Wars from a business standpoint and from a entertainment standpoint, look, even I love Ariel. She's an animated character, but when I saw, The Little Mermaid, I was all in. They revolutionized where Disney's animation was at the time. And I'm like, I could get behind Ariel, not just because she's a redhead that has, shells on her top. She was a hot animated character. But I liked that story. They took a Hans Christian Andersen story, they updated it, they gave us strong central female protagonists. And I thought that was a good thing. It was a good business model. So when they try and bring a character like Rey, and Kathleen Kennedy's wearing shirts like the Force is female, this is not a woman who wants to replace men as heroes. This is a woman that's trying to do good business and revolutionize things because, action, adventure, science fiction is no longer the purview of men. It's the purview of everybody. When I was growing up, I longed to see a girl in a comic book store. Unfortunately, now as a middle-aged man, that world has come to pass, and I didn't get to take advantage of it when I was 16. But okay, that's the world that changes. And I think she's done a pretty great job of figuring out. She went through the storm that was early Star Wars, and now gets to move in to a place that's more solidified and getting successful again. And that's a good place to be. This woman produced E.T., damn it. I mean, everybody says she just got Spielberg coffee. I mean, that is so ridiculous.
Well, no,
it's so ridiculous.
Everyone wants to ignore that Steven Spielberg said she is the single most gifted producer in the history of the business. I mean, it is what it is. Again, I still blame
Steven
her.
Spielberg nowadays? Pshaw, what does he know?
I still blame her for the fact that the sequel trilogy did not have an overall plan, which led to its ultimate crash and burn in The Rise of Skywalker. I hold her responsible for that. I hold her responsible for not being on the same page with the directors when she hires them to such a huge degree and such a high percentage. I hold her responsible for that. But if you're going to hold her responsible for those things, you also got to give her credit. And The Mandalorian, that's her, man. That's her. Anyway, let's move on here. Next up, In Nolan I Trust writes. Actually, am I in the right spot here? Yes, In Nolan I Trust writes, "Hey, John and Rob, is it me or was Gina Carano underwhelming in this season of The Mandalorian? All she ever did was growl and kick ass, whereas in the first season she was expected to deliver the dramatic goods, which she did for the most part. Do you agree?" Here's the thing about that. I have been a Gina Carano fan for a long time, ever since her MMA days. I mean, that's where I first became a fan of hers, was because she was just a great fighter. But listen, she will be the first person to tell you she is not a great thespian. All right? She's not a great actress. I loved her in Deadpool, but let's call it what it is. It's not like she was in line for any awards consideration in Deadpool. It's much like, if you can get her, though, with her unique set of physical talents and what she can bring to the screen physically, and you get the right directors working with her, she can be a real asset. Like a real asset. And I thought what we saw with her in Mandalorian season 1 was a great example of that. They did the things with her that highlighted her strengths, and they didn't put her in situations where maybe some of her weaknesses would be exposed. And I think that just became a little bit more obvious in season 2. I think everything they asked her to do in season 2, she did fine. But they clearly didn't ask her to do too much. I think the most dramatic scene she had was probably in that finale when the guy is talking about Alderaan. And a lot of that was just have a very stern face. But I think it's unfair to criticize Gina Carano for not being Meryl Streep when she's never pretended to be Meryl Streep. You know, and she's getting better. She is getting better. But yeah, I agree they didn't use her much this season. Rob, what's your assessment of Gina Carano's performance in season 2?
Well, first of all, she's my kind of girl. I mean, she's formidable. She's beautiful. She can kick the shit out of you. I mean, she's just, I think the fact that they're making her more of a main character, and when they've used her, I thought she's been used very effectively. I mean, I have to tell you, one of my favorite moments in all of The Mandalorian is when her gun jammed. I mean, maybe it might not make sense that a beam weapon would jam, but it did happen. And I love that, her bit of acting, and the fact that she actually did that. And I don't understand what people like. I've liked Gina Carano since Haywire. You know, she was used by Steven Soderbergh, and I think, gosh, I mean, here's a girl whose boyfriend brought her into MMA. It's not like she ever was like grew up wanting to be a fighter or a wrestler or whatever. And she works her ass off. And like you said, she's not Meryl Streep, but more power to her, because I love her. and I love that she's not thin as a waif. I think she's so sexy and she's so powerful and she kicks ass. And I can't wait to see more of her. And hello, Hot Toys. I want a hot toy of Gina Carano. You know
hot
what I'm saying?
Cara Dune. All right, next up, Around UK writes, "I'm a law graduate, but I want to transition to the TV industry. How did you do it? Also, I've written a script and I don't know what to do, nowhere to send it. Also, would you do a video for the case for the Lost TV show finale? And what are your thoughts about Lost?" Well, I'll take one question out of the 5 you just sent in, Ron. The transition was listen, there was no logical transition. It was just, I had a movie blog that I did for fun, and it was called The Movie Blog. And, you know, when I had 100 readers a month, it was a lot of fun to do. Before you knew it, I had 250,000 readers a month, and all of a sudden I made a little bit of money, and I just decided to just start doing it full time, and that's kind of where it led. So it's everybody's journey is going to be unique. I will say one other thing though about the script. Rob and I often have to be the downers here. Some people still think, Rob, that if you write a script, there's an address you mail it to, and somebody in Hollywood will discover it and make your movie. And that is the perception.
That's not how it works?
That is not how it works. Studios will not read your scripts. It's just that, sorry to say it, but studios won't read your scripts. There's a very important legal reason why they won't read your scripts. Because if they accept your scripts and then 5 years later, they make a movie that's kind of similar to a script you sent them and they accepted your script, even if they never looked at your script, you could go, hey, that movie is like the one that I wrote and sent to you 5 years ago. You're plagiarizing my thing, even if they never looked at it. So studios have a very firm rule about they don't accept unsolicited scripts. They have certain producers and literary agents that they will work with, and only through them. So, Rob, what I always tell people is if you really want to be a writer, write. But then once you get that down, you got to get a literary agent. And that can be more difficult than an actor getting a great talent agent. It's very difficult. It's very hard. But if you think you've got good stuff, you need to try to get a literary agent. And once you get a reputable literary agent, then maybe some people can start seeing your stuff. Rob, what would you recommend to people for that?
Well, I mean, the first place that I would start going to is there's a lot of screenplay contests, and in my mind,
yeah, most film festivals have a screenplay contest component to them, as a matter of fact.
I mean, yes, and if you get a win, or you get to be a Nichols Fellowship semifinalist or something, I mean, to me, trying to throw a screenplay out into Hollywood without any kind of anybody behind it, it's like throwing a message in a bottle out into the ocean. Your chances are next to nil. And as somebody, like, I spent a number of years in the 90s, I read screenplays for agencies. I worked for production companies, and you'd be surprised at just how many scripts people are wading through. And I hate to say it, but 99% of the screenplays that I read over 3,000 screenplays professionally, I said yes to one.
Wow.
One. And that was Andy Kevin Walker's 7 that David Fincher made.
Wow. All right. Next up here. What is next? Our next one is Othello writes, hey, John, I'm pretty excited about Star Wars showing the High Republic era. What are the chances do you think we'll see Yoda in the Acolyte? Well, I mean, that's an interesting question, Othello, Rob, because they already did say we are going to see a 500-year younger Yoda in the High Republic, right? They've already said we're going to see Yoda in the High Republic. How minor of a character or how major of a character? Will he pop up in one episode? Will he be a semi-regular? We don't know. But we're going to get a Yoda who's about 500 years younger. Will he pop up in the Acolyte? I want to say no. But right now, Disney and Lucasfilm are so obsessed with everything interconnecting in every way possible. I got to say, I think the chances are probably pretty good we get Yoda in the Acolyte. Rob, what do you think?
I would imagine so. For 800 years have I trained Jedi. That's not a Yoda impression. That's just a fact, I guess. But why wouldn't we? I mean, I would think that we're gonna. Isn't the Acolyte also supposed to be like a crime thriller show? It's some kind of like dark investigative thing. Something isn't that? I mean, I would assume that Yoda is somebody that they would often consult if he's the one that's training Jedi and people know him. He's going to be somebody that that we're probably going to see be recurring. And why wouldn't we?
Well, I mean, with the Acolyte, but in the Acolyte specifically, I mean, it's really investigating more. It's our main character is going to be a dark side character, whether that's Sith or not. We'll have to wait and see. So.
Yeah, I think that Yoda would probably be not just we'd see him, he'd be some kind of a recurring character. Huh? And I don't have a problem. Like, I know people are going to be like, well, it's fan service that Yoda's a recurring character. Well, no, he was established in Empire Strikes Back as a character that's been training Jedi for a very long time. And it would make sense that he was at the height of his powers during the height of the High Republic. I mean, he would have been probably the guru. I would imagine that. Can you imagine seeing like baller Yoda when he's like the ultimate, like he's wearing like robes and he's totally like kick ass and he speaks differently, you know, and
I
he
don't
stands
think he's
up
going to be
straight.
on the Jedi. I don't think he's going to be on the Jedi Council though.
No,
I think
no, probably not, because he's like more of a sensei.
probably,
You know,
yeah.
the Jedi. I mean, he's going to be like the ultimate Mr. Miyagi. But if Mr. Miyagi was like Liam Neeson in Taken, he's going to be a badass. And I mean, I think it's going to be rad. I can't wait to see that. And I think that makes sense. And that's the kind of thing that I love, because you're world building. You're extrapolating on. We've never seen, like, I want to see the most badass Jedi training. We've seen like younglings, but what if you have like a whole armada or a cadre or what's it called? You know, I don't know, a platoon of Jedi being trained by Yoda, and the kind of survivalist training that they have to go through. It's going to be what if he's like Lee Ermey in Full Metal Jacket, but a Jedi?
Right. By the way, I should kind of mention here that a bunch of people in the live chat are throwing in, John, did Alan Horde? Yeah, we already talked about that, everybody, just so you know. But thank you for giving us the heads up. But we already discussed that just a little bit ago, so don't worry about it. All right, next up, Stubble McShave writes, 2020 has been crappy when it comes to entertainment, but I must say that Disney has, with the combination of investors' presentation and The Mandalorian, given me hope for what is to come in the future. It gave me a sense of enthusiasm for what is to come. I mean, listen, that Disney presentation did more to give us an enthusiasm injection than anything else. I mean, like, we knew they were going to make big announcements at it. None of us knew how many big, significant, important things they were going to give us with the MCU and Star Wars and everything else in between as well. I mean, it was absolutely Stubble, an absolute shot in the arm, no doubt about it. All right, next up, we've got Matthew Nuttleman, who writes, what do you think of Discovery Plus coming out on January 4th? Yeah, they're pushing that heavy. Like, and Discovery Plus, it's going to be bigger than some people think, because it, as HGTV, Food Network, and a whole bunch of these other things are all under Discovery. It's going to be more popular than think. Is it going to rival Amazon, Disney Plus, Netflix, HBO Max? No, it's not going to rival those. It's going to be its own thing. And it's going to be in a different category and significantly smaller, but again, bigger than most people. Do not underestimate how many people love watching those home renovation shows. Do not underestimate how many people like watching those diners, drive-ins, and dives and cooking competition shows and all these things. There are a lot of people who love that stuff. And while it's not going to get 40 million subscribers, it doesn't need to, because instead of spending $500,000 an episode, they spend $60,000 an episode. I mean, so it's going to do pretty well. I think it's a good move for them. All right, Jack Lumbers writes, John, what are your theories regarding the series finale of Supernatural? Well, there are no theories. The show's done. There's no more theories to have. I enjoyed it. I thought it was appropriate. The penultimate episode kind of felt like the series finale, but then they gave us this nice little tag of what happens after the happily ever after. And I thought it was a nice little thing to do. And it felt very appropriate. I'll always think of the penultimate episode as kind of being the finale, but that last episode they did, I thought worked really well. Min Tran writes, with all the Star Wars announcements, are you and Harloff interested in doing Dark Side, Light Side again? No. Here's the reality. Christian and I are just simply, actually, I was on the phone. Literally, I was on the phone with Harloff yesterday. Me and Christian were just talking about different stuff on the phone yesterday. But I am simply too busy to be doing cross stuff, unfortunately. And he is as well. And, you know, I've known for some time that he's got a new Star Wars show that he's launching himself. And I know he's put on Twitter that I'm welcome to be on, but I just don't have time for that. And I know neither does he. But no, there will not be Dark Side, Light Side again. There's just too much stuff going on. All right. Koa1708 writes, how come the majority, if not all, of the upcoming Star Wars shows are still set in the Skywalker time frame? Am I the only one that wants more beyond this? I guess not, since they announced no more storyline based on the sequel trilogy. Well, no, Rob, I think There is a couple things to announce. First of all, Kathy Kennedy did say that I missed this during the announcement, but some other people reminded me about this, that Rogue Squadron is happening after the events of The Rise of Skywalker, which I didn't catch the first time. And then some people wrote it. No, she said in the near future. So like after the events of The Rise of Skywalker. So that's interesting. We got the Acolyte, which is outside of that. We know there's a bunch of stuff coming in the age of the High Republic, which is outside of the Skywalker thing, but they're doing what they know how to do. They're relying on nostalgia, fan service, and whatever. And again, nostalgia and fan service are not inherently bad things. They're tools that can be used badly or tools that can be used well. They've been using them very, very well. Because look, this is going to sound controversial, but it's absolutely the truth, Rob. Some people said, I'm glad John Favreau doesn't do the easy thing. And I said, now wait a minute, time out. I love Favreau. I love Favreau. But if you're making a Star Wars thing, let's face it, you want to get it's like when you're doing a concert, Rob, and you're in Buffalo. You say, hey, you want to get a pop from the audience? Just go, hello, Buffalo. That's the easy way to get a big pop from the audience. Like, yay, he said the name of the city we're in. Yay. Like we all do it. If you're making something Star Wars and you just want to get an easy, no risk pop, have Luke Skywalker show up. I mean, that's not rocket science. That's not brain surgery, right? That's pretty easy thing to do. It's just have Luke show up and wreck some fools with lightsabers. But easy is sometimes the best thing to do. Sometimes fan service is the right thing to do. Sometimes nostalgia is the right thing to play into. So I think what Kennedy and Lucasfilm are doing right now is launching strong with the things that they know are strong. There's a big Ahsoka fan base, Rob. Hell, for fuck's sakes, even I'm looking forward to the Ahsoka show. Me! I don't even like the damn character, and I'm looking forward to this show. But you got a lot of fans of Ahsoka, so you do an Ahsoka show. People love The Mandalorian, do another Mandalorian. People love Lando Calrissian, make Lando Calrissian. You know, they're starting strong while peppering in some stuff outside of that regular stuff. Rogue Squadron, The Acolyte, we're going to get more stuff down the road. So while I would like to see more stuff outside of what we already know, this is by the Disney playbook for the MCU and certainly for Star Wars right now. And listen, while I would do it a little bit differently, it probably is the right approach right now. Rob, what's your take on that?
I totally agree. I think that I mean, John, this stuff is making me, as a Star Wars fan since I was 10 years old, happy. Everybody's like, look, I see a lot of people that are my age that are poo-pooing the fact that, well, there's not a lot of depth to these shows. And, I'd love to see like Breaking Bad in the Star Wars universe. That's legit. I can see that. But you know what? This show appeals to me the same way Star Wars appeals. All these shows appeal to me in the same way Star Wars appealed to me when I first saw it. Like, I've never looked for deep, resonant depth in the Star Wars universe. Now, does that mean that it can't? To me, Empire Strikes Back was the height of depth. Judge me by my size, do you? That's a good point. I mean, I don't believe it. That is why you fail. Yeah, this is not exactly Plato. This is Yoda making a point that, look, I can make your X-Wing rise up out of the water because you're a schmuck and you haven't learned any of the lessons I've tried to teach you. And then and I think I'm having so much fun. Like, I want to see dudes wrecking shop, killing stormtroopers, destroying the Empire, in cool ships. I mean, they're with lightsabers or dark sabers or whatever. And I mean, The Mandalorian, its format is 30 to 45-minute episodes. It's literally like watching a Saturday morning serial in the cinemas back in the 40s. I mean, I don't know what that was like because I didn't exist, but I've read about it. And I think that that's what's so great about The Mandalorian. When it was great in the last 4 or 5 episodes this season, they were like these bite-sized chunks of awesomeness that made me feel like I wanted to go unpack every Star Wars toy I still own and play with them. And I'm like, I haven't felt that way in a long, long time. And I think everything that they're doing, they've figured out that They're no longer under the pressure of showing that their Star Wars investment is viable. They've proven that. Now they're going to be like, now let's go have some fun, folks, and let's make people happy with what we're doing. And I think they are. And I can't wait to see what's happening. Dude, I'm excited. As a middle-aged man with one foot in the grave, I never thought I'd be this excited for Star Wars again. And I am. So bring it on. Bring me all the fan service. Bring it to me, John. I want it now. Why do I have to wait? Even my girlfriend's like, we have to wait another year for Mando mornings? I'm like, I don't know, baby. What can I tell you? You know what? They got to make this stuff. It takes a year.
Yeah, it takes a little while, but we got a lot on the way. Rob, we know you got to go. Thanks a lot for spending your time here with us. In the meantime, my friend, where can people follow you and your adventures online?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to go get my die-cast Slave 1 right now, and I'm going to put it right behind me because I'll feel better. But you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work.
All right, Rob, thanks a lot for being here, man, and we will talk to you again soon, my friend. Have a good one.
All right. Have a good Christmas if we don't talk.
I'm sure we will. All right. Have a good one, man. All right, guys. That is the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett bringing his glory and goodness to the show. But we still got some time here, so let's keep on going through your topics here. Next up, we got Mr. Steele. The show writes, wow, what a fantastic episode. This gave me the Luke that the last Jedi miserably failed to bring. His CGI face was pretty bad, though, in my opinion. Henry Cavill mustache vibes going on. Thanks and take care. Yeah, and I'm somebody, I really wanted this Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. But I was very satisfied with the Luke we got in The Last Jedi, that they went more character focused, but whatever. What I've wanted for a long time, see Luke wreck shop. There is no getting around the CGI was bad. Okay. We get it. It was. And it's not wrong to point it out, but it's just for me personally, I recognize that the CGI was bad right away. And then I just got over it. I mean, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. I get it. I accept it. It's bad. So it didn't distract from me how great the rest, and it's just what a cool experience it was watching it regardless. So, yep, total truth. The CGI was bad. I don't know how they do it bad when they do it so well in so many other things, but it didn't take away from it for me. And probably in a later iteration, they'll probably fix it. And when we watch a rerun of this episode sometime down the line, it'll probably look better at some point. All right. Harry Mudd writes, I love this season finale of Mandalorian. It was so elated and misty-eyed at the same time. The perfect ending of a great season. Simply cannot find anything to complain about. Completely agree. It was a great way to end the season. And hell, if this was a series finale, it would have been a great series finale. Think about it. If they had said that Mandalorian was going to be 2 seasons and 2 seasons only, and then we got this ending, this would have been a perfect series finale. But it was also a perfect season finale. Because one of the things that I said that they cannot do, don't end this on, oh, some Jedi shows up and you just see a silhouette in the background and then the season ends, they don't tell us who it was. You can't do that. You've got to bring the season to completion and then open the door for what the next season can be. And that's what this episode did. It brought the whole story of this season to conclusion. The story of this season was he's got to get Baby Yoda to his people. So they brought that to conclusion. And at the same time, they cracked open a door with the Mandalorians having to go back to Mandalore, the stuff with the Darksaber. They opened up cracks in the door that can lead into season 3. It's what Supernatural did for 15 seasons and did it so well. And it was great to see them do it so well with Mandalorian. It's just a brilliantly executed finale. Absolutely. All right, next up. Wakanda Forever writes, I'm a movie guy. I never pay too much attention to TV and literally have never watched a full season of any TV show or network series, John. John, you and Rob got so hyped. I plan on watching the full Mandalorian season starting season 1 to 2. First series ever. Well, listen, you're starting in a good place and I'm very jealous because you get to do something I will never be able to do again. You get to watch The Mandalorian for the first time. You're going to get to binge it all at the same time, too. So I trust you're going to have a really good time, Wakanda, and I think you're going to have a really good time. Super Duper Uber Noober writes, I love that name, who also tipped in $20. Thank you so much, man, for supporting the channel on that level. He writes in, I have not yet seen There Will Be Blood, one of the greatest lead actor performance in the history of cinema, in my opinion. by Daniel Day-Lewis in that. But my favorite performance of all time could be Richard Dawson as the villainous game show host in The Running Man. Maybe a perfect performance, and he had the best reply to Arnold's, "I'll be back." That is classic, man. That is absolutely classic, and I miss him. I really do. I don't know what it was, but like a few months ago, I think I was hanging out with Ray, and I think we got into a little rabbit hole of watching like old Family Feud stuff, which was really weird. Anyway, definitely watch There Will Be Blood. At number one, just because the movie is magnificent. It's absolutely magnificent. But the cherry on top is, again, to me, and it's all subjective, just because I think this doesn't mean you'll think it, but it was the movie that had, I believe, the single greatest male lead performance in the history of all film, of Daniel Day-Lewis, who is in and of himself the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time. But I think this was his crowning achievement. This was his crown jewel, his performance in this. It will live with you. When you watch him in There Will Be Blood, it will live with you, like for the rest of your life as a movie fan. And again, you may think differently when you see it, but to me, it's the greatest performance ever. And the overall movie itself is just fantastic, man. Make sure you do yourself a favor and check it out, because it is absolutely incredible. All right, AAA writes, "I don't get it. Why do some fans think John and Dave are like some rogue element faction in Lucasfilm/Star Wars going against the wishes of Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Ryan, etc.? Some fans seem to view them as autonomous, and I don't understand." The reason for that is AAA is because a lot of people just hate Kathy Kennedy, so they create this imaginary world where she, as the head of Lucasfilm, had nothing to do with Mandalorian. She had everything to do with the things that failed, and we should hold her responsible for the things she failed at. I do all the time. But they want to create this imaginary fantasy world where she isn't responsible for any of the things that worked. John Favreau sets the record straight on that many, many times, but it just comes from an underlying position that just people, there are some people that just hate Kathy Kennedy and therefore don't want to make sure she doesn't get any sort of credit, because that goes against their, that doesn't jive with their preconceived notions of what they want to think of her. But the reality is, look, and by the way, the opposite is true as well. There are people who just want to give Kathy Kennedy all the credit for the things that have worked. Hey, look, $4 billion films that she was the head of. Mandalorian, this new stuff coming. There are some people that just want to give her all the credit, but don't want to hold her responsible for the things that have gone badly. And you can't do that either. Like, I'm sorry, you're the head of the studio. When you launch a sequel trilogy that had no roadmap and no plan whatsoever, ultimately, I don't care if JJ was your director. It doesn't matter. You're the head of the studio. That's on you. When you go through 5 different projects and you have 6 directors ditching and leaving and all that kind of stuff because you can't get on the same page with your filmmakers and your storytellers, I don't care. That's on you. And you should hold her responsible for that. But you can't pick one or the other. It's both. You got to give her credit for the things that work, and you got to give her the wins. Just like you got to hold her responsible and give her the losses for the things that don't. But there's a lot of people on both sides that like to create this imaginary world where she's only responsible for the good stuff, or she's only responsible for the bad stuff, and neither are true. Neither are true. But people like to create their own little fantasy worlds to endorse their own pre-existing prejudices. And let's face it, we all do it, right? We all do it at some point. You do it. I've done it. We're all guilty of that. All right. The Wakanda Forever writes, "Here comes the boss, and Bruce Springsteen was nowhere to be seen. Sasha Banks, the legit boss herself." But just so you know, Sasha Banks, who plays Bo-Katan's like right-hand girl in Mandalorian, she's a professional wrestler. Some of you may not know that. She's a professional wrestler, and her nickname in professional wrestling is the boss. The legit boss herself showing off. Talk about excited. Woo! My all-time wrestling crush. Don't get me started, John. Oh yeah, Star Wars, Luke Skywalker. That's fun too. My wife really likes her too, because you look at Sasha Banks. Let me see if I can find an image here of Sasha Banks. Hold on a second. Sasha Banks. Let me find a good picture of her here, because this is a good one. So Sasha Banks is like absolutely gorgeous. And she's like physically just incredible shape. She's a great performer. She's fantastic in ring and all that kind of stuff. She's really, really great. And I like her a lot. The interesting thing is that she is married to this total geeky, I think he's Filipino. This is why my family, like Anne and Ray, really like her. She's married to this like total nerd, geeky Filipino dude, which is like, to all the geeky nerdy guys around the world, it's like that gives them all hope that you could end up with a girl like Sasha Banks. Because you look at a girl like Sasha Banks, and you'd figure she would be married to some big, bulky, square-jawed, popular dude. And anyway, yeah, it's great. So hope is alive, Wakandan forever. Hope is alive. All right, let's move on here. Next up, where are we at? We're at Dragonborn Druid writes, wow, I'm glad I listened to the credit music. Usually skip the credits. Glad to see the Boba show will take place after, but sad that Fennec seems to have parted with Mando. They paid their debt. Notice how Luke still Luke was during the scene. Oh yeah, well that's part of the bad CGI. I am Luke Skywalker. I am a Jedi. And me and Anne were joking that was like when you see Canadians on South Park, like the top part of their head doesn't move, but the bottom part of their jaw, I am Luke Skywalker. No movement whatsoever because the CGI was really bad. Anyway, yes. But you know what? The Mandalorian is still going to tie in with this Boba Fett series. There's going to be a way that this Boba Fett series with Boba and Fennec, which I'm so glad Fennec is with him, because that last shot of Boba on the throne and Fennec sitting on the arm with a bottle of booze, and I'm like, come on. This is too cool. This is too cool. Anyway, they'll be tied in there some way, somehow. You watch. They will be tied in some way, somehow. All right, next up, Dragonborn also writes, I actually hated was how they were like, look how scary these dark troopers are. Can't wait to see how scary they are to fight. And it took forever and too many cuts to get to the actual fight. My dad and I kept calling them Cylons if they had one eye. Well, they're also very Terminator-ish. But, I got to disagree with you, Dragonborn, because I thought the way they handled them was perfect, because that was all set up so that at the end, right, they knew in that final scene when they were coming up, when they were trapped inside of the room, they knew that we as the audience had to feel a hopelessness, right? And the only way you set up that total feeling of complete and utter hopelessness is if you set them up the way you set them up. Because look, when they were outside that door and punching on the door, and they're all inside with their guns, we knew, because of the way they set up the Dark Troopers, we knew that all of them inside there had no chance. They could point their guns at the doors, and they could, pull whatever MMA moves that, that Cara Dune was going to do, or any slick other moves, combat moves that Fennec could pull out, or whatever Mando was going to do with his Beskar saber. It wasn't going to matter. They were done. It was completely hopeless. And I believe when you put that type of care into setting up an important scene like that, I thought the payoff was well worth it. And I'm just speaking for myself, but I thought the payoff to that was really, really well worth it. And I thought they executed it pretty good, to be honest with you. But, that's just me. Okay, let's move on here. Next up, that was Dragonborn. Next up is Nathaniel Molnar writes, as much as I love seeing Luke, I think it was a mistake to de-age Hamill. They were clearly cutting around the character to not show his face. Had they cast a new actor in the role, I feel like could have gotten more emotional and a stronger moment. I mean, listen, by the way, I'm not even sure I don't think they de-aged Hamill. I don't think Hamill was actually on set. I could be wrong about that. I don't know that for certain, but I don't even think that was Mark Hamill there and they just de-aged him. That might have been better if they did, but I don't think they just de-aged Hamill. Not to mention that clearly wasn't Mark Hamill talking. They got somebody else who could do a really, really good Mark Hamill interpretation of the voice, but I don't think they de-aged him. Would it have been better to have another actor. I've gone back and forth on this. On the one hand, and let me see if I can get an image of this. Luke Skywalker. On the one hand, you look at it and you think, well, this is a situation where it clearly would have been better if they had just gone out and got an actor, right? When you look at this, even the still image doesn't quite look right? Even the still image doesn't quite look right. But when it's actually video, that's when it really doesn't look right. So on the one hand, you say to yourself, and I know I did, I said, this might have been a situation where it might have been better just to have hired a different actor. Just someone who looks somewhat close to Luke, and then just do a little bit of prosthetics, do a little bit of makeup, just to make them look as much like Luke as possible. And I was with a lot of you guys on that at first. I have changed my mind, though. I have changed my mind, and I now believe that this, even though the CGI was bad, that this was the better thing to do. And here's why. Because the most important moment, besides seeing Luke wrecking shop with everybody and killing all the robots and all that kind of stuff, the most important moment was when he's in the room with everybody else and he grabs the hood and reveals the face. That moment was so important that I think I'm willing to bet that their whole decision about whether to get an actor or just do a digital young Mark Hamill face was based on the fact that when he does that reveal, it cannot be some other actor. No matter how much they might look like a young Mark Hamill, it cannot be a different face. It cannot be a different actor's face. When he pulls over that hood, it's got to be Luke's face. And while the CGI was bad and it was a little bit distracting, although not terribly distracting, when he would be talking, "Come, little one, he is waiting for your permission." Even though that all looked pretty odd, I'm willing to trade all of that for the moment he pulls back the hood and you see Luke's face. Not another actor who kind of looks like Luke, but you see Luke's face. And when I realized how important that moment was, that's when I kind of changed my mind. Because at first I was totally like, oh, guys, you should have just got an actor to do it. But when I realized how important that moment was, that's when I sort of changed my mind. But that's just me. Maybe you guys think differently. All right, next up. We've got Charles Upton, who writes, one of two. I like how no one asked for Luke's name and where he is taking the child. For a split second, I thought Mr. Kim pulled up in the X-Wing. I think a bunch of people did too. Then no radio response, was like, holy, it's Luke. Straight tear jerker, mind blown. With the epic season finale of The Mandalorian and all the new upcoming shows, it feels like Star Wars continuity is heading in the right direction, especially with the Disney sequel trilogy not being considered canon anymore. Well, can we just put that to bed right now? The sequel trilogy is canon. I don't care what you're reading on what Go Joe Gus's Bob movie fart extreme gas station pussy. I don't care where you think you're reading that from. The sequel trilogy is still absolutely 1000% canon. It is 1000% canon. That's it. It's like my argument about the prequels. I hate the prequels, but guess what? The prequels are canon. The prequels are canon. I don't care if I like the prequels or not. The prequels are canon. The sequel trilogy, as much as for me it ended on a huge disappointment, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. So let's just be very clear. It is canon. It is considered canon, despite whatever some people who desperately try to want to make it so and pretend like it's not canon anymore and run with these fake stories that Lucas is going to retract it from canon. They're not. They're not. I don't even think it might be that bad of an idea. I don't even think it'd be that bad of an idea to retract the prequels and the sequel trilogy from canon. I don't think it would be a bad idea, but they're not going to do it. and they haven't done it. And that's the important thing to say there. But it was quite an epic season finale, man. No doubt about it. All right. Bad Sonic Ninja writes, oh my God, that episode made me feel like I was 10 again, and the last 10 minutes is one of the top 10 moments of all Star Wars. By the way, I got some huge Battlestar Galactica with the way the TIE fighters launched, and when Bo said she was coming in hot, happy holidays. Oh, dude, that's one of the things I said too, specifically. It's like the way they launched the TIE fighters out of that light cruiser. And remember, the way TIE fighters launch out of light cruisers is different than the way they launch out of regular Star Destroyers, right? But I remember when Ann and I were talking about this, I said, one of the cool things for me was the way they launched out of there reminded me a lot of the way Vipers would launch out of the Battlestar Galactica. And, you know, it was not lost on me that you had her there, that you had Bo-Katan, who of course played Starbuck in the Ronald D. Moore Battlestar Galactica. That was not lost on me, Bad Sonic Ninja. That was not lost on me at all. Caleb writes, sent you Darabont's Indy 4 script. I got that, as a matter of fact. Did you read it? I have not had a chance to read it yet. I just bought a house. I'm very, I'm actually, after I'm done the show today, I'm driving out to the new house today to do some painting in the secondary bathroom. Jonathan Voico is coming out to help me with that. It's going to be awfully great. So no, I have not had a chance to read it yet. Also, over under 45%, James Wan quits Aquaman 2. According to the Hollywood Reporter, he had 12% first dollar gross on Malignant. He is the financer. He and the financiers are going to sue Warner Brothers. Well, I don't think he leaves Aquaman 2. I don't think he leaves Aquaman 2. Just for a couple reasons. One, it's too potentially big. So there's that. Number two, he's already signed a contract to do it. Now, if he totally doesn't want to do it, then I'm sure Warner Brothers will let him out. But I'm going to go under 45% that he leaves Aquaman 2. I think he is still good, even though he's completely unhappy with Warner Brothers right now. Everybody is unhappy with Warner Brothers right now. I still think he's going to direct that. We'll see, though. It is possible he decides to leave, but I think he's still going to be there. All right, the Wakandan Forever writes, people stop it. If they dare try to replace King T'Challa and install Killmonger as ruler, I would revoke my citizenship and leave the country. Wakanda never forgets. After what he tried to pull, no way. Never say never. I'm saying never. Wakanda Forever. No, I completely agree. The idea that Killmonger becomes the next Black Panther is utterly ridiculous. When you actually look at the events and who that character is and how he relates to the country, you cannot become the Black Panther. You can say he has a change of heart and tries to make up for all the terrible things he's done. That's great, but they're not going to make him Black Panther, and they certainly wouldn't make him king. Leo writes, Luke be like, just going to remove the child from the situation before all y'all murder each other over a funny looking lightsaber. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Like somebody was mentioning a little bit earlier, just this dude shows up and you don't even ask, what's your name? Who are you? And why should I let this child that I've just spent all this time with and busted my ass to rescue, why should I just let him go with you? I think, though, if they had not seen him, like if they were just sitting in a cantina somewhere and Luke Skywalker showed up and said, I am a Jedi. Oh, cool. I am taking the child. Okay, cool. I don't think that would have happened. I think there would have been a lot more questions. But they just watched him get out of an X-Wing, light up a lightsaber, and destroy these indestructible machines like it was nothing. And then he comes in the room after they had sent out a call trying to find a Jedi somewhere. Then he comes walking in the room and just stands there. When he says, I'm here for the child. Are you a Jedi? Yes, I am. That's good enough. You don't need to ask. His ID was him kicking the Dark Troopers' asses. That was his ID. But I think if it had happened in just some quiet cantina when he showed up, I think that conversation would have been totally different, Leo. I think it would have been totally different. Next up, Anonymous writes, a lot of grown adult men cried last night at Mandalorian. Oh, they absolutely did, man. I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos and people's reaction was amazing. Anonymous also writes, becoming a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle would have a major toll on my social life. I was joking about that on last week's show where I said, who knows? Maybe this, what is it? They're calling it the vaccine for COVID-19. Maybe it doesn't help the situation with theaters. Maybe we all take it and it turns us into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I had so many people write to me after that saying, you know what? That wouldn't be a bad idea. I wouldn't mind becoming a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. All right. El Postino, the Postman, writes, spoiler alert for The Mandalorian, 3, 2, 1. Did Ben Solo, a.k.a. Kylo Ren, kill Grogu? That is a possibility. It is a possibility that Grogu becomes one of the... Look, there are a couple of possibilities. Number one, Baby Yoda becomes one of the victims of the Kylo Ren exodus. Possibility number two, Baby Yoda becomes one of the Knights of Ren. Possibility. I personally think the more likely scenario is, and this is just me guessing, I personally think the more likely scenario is at some point Yoda or Luke just basically sent Baby Yoda back to his species. I think maybe he trains Baby Yoda for a while and says, now it's important for you to go and connect with your people, and sends him back to whatever Yoda and Yadal's homeworld is. So my guess, and it's just a guess, is that when the turning of Kylo Ren happens, Baby Yoda is no longer there. I think he's already long gone at that point. But again, that's just a guess. We'll have to see how that all goes. All right, Terrence F. writes, 1 of 2. Hey, John, longtime viewer here. Thank you so much, Terrence. I remember when you wore your Superman cape and on Movie Talk in anticipation of Man of Steel. Great time. So do I, man. So I have an AMC open near me and have tickets to see Wonder Woman 84. I am looking forward to it, but given the current state of things with COVID-19, I feel I'm being irresponsible by going, but I'm torn because I love the theater experience and it may never be the same after 2020. And this may be the last time I get to enjoy a movie this way. What are your thoughts? Well, listen, I've been talking about this a bit myself, Terrence, in that, you know, I drove to Las Vegas so I could watch. There were no movie theaters open around me. And I drove to Las Vegas specifically so I could watch New Mutants in a movie theater. I then drove to Anaheim when there was a movie theater in California open in Anaheim. So I drove like the hour to go to Anaheim to watch Tenet. Because, and in those experiences, I found, and both of them were AMC theaters that I went to, I found that the safety procedures and protocols they had were fantastic. And I felt very, I felt very comfortable going into those theaters. However, we were not in the midst of the massive spikes that we are in right now. So even though I don't have the option of going to a movie theater to see Wonder Woman, even if I wanted to right now, even if there was one open in Anaheim and all I had to do was drive an hour to go see it, I have a feeling right now that even though AMC had done a great job, just the fact that we're in this super high spike period, and I can only speak for myself, I would probably personally not go right now. Adding to that is the fact that there is light at the end of the tunnel right now with the vaccines starting to be distributed, that maybe not this month, maybe not next month, but relatively soon, there's light at the end of the tunnel and we'll be able to get back to our theater going experiences. And now with the bailout money coming from the government to keep the theaters afloat, now with Disney saying they're committed to the theatrical experience, and all the pushback happening on Warner Brothers, there may be some hope here still. Maybe. I'm not being overly optimistic, but maybe. But I got to say, so I would say it's really up to you, man. It's where do you live? What are the pandemic spikes like where you live? Is your theater implementing really strict protocols? And if so, you got to make that decision for yourself. And I would never judge you for that decision, whichever way you went. But if you're asking me, I'm just saying me, myself, in the midst of major spikes, I would probably stay home myself, but I would totally get going at the same time. So you make that decision for yourself, man. Those are just my thoughts. All right. I'm impressed that you would even stop to give that some consideration, man. All right. Wakanda Forever writes, I've always been a Lord Vader guy. I think a lot of us have. Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars film just for his scene alone. I never cared about Luke growing up. It wasn't until Last Jedi that I ever found him interesting. Mandalorian has officially made me a fan. I mean, listen, Luke to me has always been my number one favorite character. I know that sounds very stereotypical and kind of a push, if you will, because, well, obviously Luke, he's the main character, Star Wars, obviously, but no, seriously, has always been my favorite character. And yeah, so that's just why. And listen, Luke being my favorite character is one of the reasons why I found the iteration of Luke in The Last Jedi absolutely fascinating and very, very consistent with the character. It wasn't what I was looking for. It wasn't what I was hoping for. It was something different, but I ended up really appreciating what they did with Luke in The Last Jedi. But to see what I got to see in the Mandalorian finale, it's like, it brought about a lot of joy, man. I'm not going to lie. It brought about a lot of joy. Wakanda Forever also writes, Star Wars favorite Rogue One, original trilogy. Star Wars favorites, Rogue One, original trilogy, Force Awakens. I never liked the prequels. Last Jedi was pretty. Rise of Skywalker was lame. Never cared about cartoons. Mandalorian makes my top tier now. R2-D2 and Baby Yoda. Stop it. No more cuteness left. I know that there are people around the world trying to get a life-size R2-D2 model to be beside a life-size Baby Yoda model as we speak. And that was a great shot, man. Like when R2-D2 comes rolling around the corner, it's like, what a perfect cherry on top of that whole moment. Luke had kicked ass. He's in there now. We see it's Skywalker. He's talking to the thing. And just to put a cherry on top, they have R2-D2 roll around the corner. What a great moment that was. All right, Chris writes, hey, John, love all that you do. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate that, man. One of my favorite bands of all time is the great Canadian rock band Rush. So many people's favorite band. And I would love to see a biopic about them. If that were to happen, would you see it? Also, what's another band you'd like to see a biopic on? Thanks. Generally speaking, Chris, I'm not a fan of musical biopics for two reasons. Number one, most musical biopics are all the same. It's an individual who has great natural talent and against all odds makes it big. But then once they make it big, their personal demons take over and they get involved in substance abuse and other destructive behavior. Oh, but at the end, they find some redemption and get their lives back on track. I just described Walk the Line. I just described Bohemian Rhapsody. I just described Rocket Man. I mean, they're all the same. And the second reason for me is personally, I'd rather see biopics about people who legitimately in a meaningful way, like change the world, right? I prefer that. But that being said, more times than not, I actually end up liking the musical biopics anyway. Like whether it's Ray, I love Bohemian Rhapsody, Walk the Line. So I end up usually liking them anyway. So I don't know what it is I'm complaining about. So I'm not really, in advance, I'm very rarely interested in musical biopics. I wouldn't even be all that interested in a Rush biopic, even though they're good Canadian kids and they're fantastic. But I would go see it. Of course I would, regardless. If there was any band I would be remotely interested in seeing a biopic about, would probably be U2. One, because I'm a little biased. They're my all-time favorite band. But number two is the story of U2 is pretty amazing, and they've done a lot to use that platform to make big world changes, whether it's global AIDS, feeding hungry people, all these types of things, these efforts they do to try to actually change the world outside of just music. Not to mention they basically formed in a Bible school, which is like a weirdest thing. Like, anyway, so probably U2, but I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't even be tremendously interested in a U2 biopic. I mean, if they did it, I'd have some interest. But not overall. But I'd probably end up loving it like I end up loving Bohemian Rhapsody and Walk the Line and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. All right, Order 69 writes, hey, John, do you think the younglings put up a fight against Vader, or do you think he just Vadered out execution style? Do you think they would be in too much shock to fight back? I have a feeling they would. Listen, all living creatures have a fight or flight reaction, right? Even watch some David Attenborough nature documentaries, even a young gazelle that is like 30 minutes old. When a predator shows up, fight or flight. And it's always flight. It's always run. But all living creatures have this fight or flight. So I have a feeling probably most of the younglings ran. A couple of them probably pulled out their lightsabers and tried to fight back, but it would have been a complete massacre. It would have been a complete and utter destruction massacre. All right, next up. James Germain writes, "Hey John, I saw season 2 finale of Mandalorian. It was great, but not as great as seeing the reactions online. Can't tell you how many people were literally weeping when you know who stepped into the hallway. And what is with the Sebastian Stan obsession online?" Well, the Sebastian Stan obsession, it all comes from a while ago. Somebody put up a slightly photoshopped thing of Sebastian Stan next to a picture of young Mark Hamill. And there's obviously some resemblance there. There clearly is. You can't deny that. But then from that, everybody went, "Ooh, he looks like him, so he should play young Luke Skywalker," when really that's the worst reason in the world. But that's where it all came from. It again, I tell the story a lot, but it reminds me a lot like when they were first talks of Lex Luthor coming into the movies. This is years ago. And Billy Zane had recently done a little movie where his head was shaved, and everybody freaked out online for a while. Billy Zane should play Lex Luthor. Why? Because look, he's bald. Isn't he Lex Luthor? I mean, but whatever. I mean, I love Sebastian Stan. I think he's great. But I mean, the whole thing about the Sebastian Stan thing all comes from the fact that somebody once put together a picture where it looks like Sebastian kind of looks like Mark. And he does. But like, to me, that's not a reason to cast him to be the young Luke. Not that I'd be against it. I wouldn't. All right. The Walking Dead fan writes, one of two. "Hey, John, love the show. Thank you so much, Walking Dead. I do agree film is subjective. I am in the minority, but generally as a 2000s kid, I am open to many older films, even if they aren't my cup of tea. That being said, I have noticed older films seem to get more love than films today. Well, that really depends on the film. For example, my favorite film of all time is La La Land, but I'm always told by those above me that it isn't as good as New York to New York. No, there will be some people that think that, but you will not find the majority of the people think that. I'll just put that out there. It's fine to me because everyone has an opinion. Although I disagree, I get it. Intrigued to hear your thoughts. Well, no, I think La La Land is better than New York, New York. I think New York, New York is good. Very good. I don't think you'll find the majority of people think New York, New York is better than La La Land. I don't think you'll find the majority, but that's the thing. Because film is so subjective, different people are going to have different thoughts of every single movie you can think of or come across. And that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. So you're always going to get that. But yeah, I don't think you'll find that. You'll always find people who will think one thing, but don't necessarily believe that just because you hear from some people that means everybody feels the same way. They don't. And that's the beautiful thing about the subjectivity of film. All right, Brian Trumpet Bling writes, I love that name. "Hey, John, watched The Rescue for the millionth time already and noticed that Moff Gideon says in order for her to wield the Darksaber again, implying maybe she can't just accept as she did the first time from Sabine. Just a thought, happy holidays." I'm seeing a lot of people trying to come up with excuses for it, and maybe it's what they'll go for. Obviously, one of the big problems with the final episode of The Mandalorian was Bo-Katan being unable to take the Darksaber because you have to win it. But the way she got the Darksaber in the first place was Sabine Wren going, "Here, take it." And so she was able to take it. So to me, look, it's a plot device. It's a plot device. It doesn't make sense, but they'll come up with, like, they wanted this drama that now there is a point of conflict between Bo-Katan and Mando. Even though neither one of them want there to be a conflict, there is a natural conflict. The Darksaber is a great plot device and MacGuffin in a way to create this conflict. So they're going to have to explain it in some very weak, flimsy, stupid way. There's just no way around it. And they're going to have to play a game of semantics. Well, Sabine, she didn't win it from Bo-Katan, and so Bo-Katan is allowed to just take it from her as a gift, but if Sabine had beat her for it, then she would have to give it to... I mean, it's just dumb. It's dumb, but it's all they're left with, right? It's all they're left with. So they're going to have to come up with some stupid, lame excuse to try to undo that contradiction. But I'm okay with that because the story that they want to tell requires it. And the story they want to tell is they want to have some point of conflict between Bo-Katan and Din, the Mandalorian. Story comes first. And if putting your story first means you have to come up with some lame ass kind of let's play a game of semantics to make it look like these two truths aren't contradictory. If that's what you have to do to tell the story you want to tell, then go for it. Story comes first. I'm a stickler for sticking to your own canon. I'm a total stickler for that. But story comes first. And if that's what their story is going to be, then play semantics away and come up with a lame way to make it seem as if it's not contradictory. Okay, guys, just have time for a couple of quick more ones here. Forgetful writes, agree with Tom Cruise, and I would have sacked the people involved for leaking the details to the worst tabloid in the world, The Sun. Anyway, like the ending of The Mandalorian, could we see a Boba Fett and Han Solo confrontation in the future? I don't think they're going to do that, because they tried doing Han Solo and it didn't work. Even though I thought Alden Ehrenreich did a perfectly good job playing Han Solo, and even though I think the Han Solo movie was quite good, it was not successful. So I don't think we're going to see Boba Fett and Han confront each other. That being said, there is a Lando series coming. So maybe they do go back to Alden Ehrenreich. It's possible. I'm going to say this, Forgetful. I'm going to guess that we will not see Han Solo. But I wouldn't be able, I would not be willing to put any money on that. I wouldn't be willing to put any money on that. I think it's a possibility. I don't think they will, but I wouldn't put any money on that. All right, Willow writes, how many pairs of pants did you go through during your viewing of the Mandalorian season finale? Oh, there would have been several. Yeah, my whole experience, my wife still laughs at me for my reaction to several different places throughout the movie. Particularly, we'll just be sitting around and Anne will go, it's Bib Fortuna. It's Bib Fortuna. Because as we were sitting there watching Mandalorian and when the post-credits scene started happening, Anne didn't even recognize who Bib Fortuna was, but I'm freaking out. Oh my God, it's Bib Fortuna. 2 seconds later, honey, it's Bib Fortuna. That is Bib Fortuna. And I was getting all excited because it was, and she just continues to make fun of me for that, as well as other reactions I had throughout the show as well. So, my wife, ladies and gentlemen, my wife. All right. Last one we're going to do here today, guys. Frankie Gouge writes, Rob is on this. They say great minds think alike. In Kevin Smith's Fat Man episode review, stated that Favreau making The Mandalorian is like going to his house and watching him play with Star Wars toys. Made him want to play with his toys. I mean, yeah, it's true. And again, a lot of that has to do with a lot of Mandalorian has been fan service. But this is a great example of how fan service is just another tool that storytellers can use. You can use it badly or you can use it well. A lot of times people don't use fan service in their stories as a tool to accomplish something. They just throw it in for the sake of throwing it in. And that's why fan service gets a really bad name, because a lot of the times they just throw it in for the sake of fan service. Whereas what the Russo brothers did in Endgame, right? Having Captain America, it made no sense in the movie. I mean, let's be honest. For Captain America to sit there on a battlefield and whisper, Avengers, assemble. There was no point to that in the story. But in that moment, in that crescendo, a properly placed piece of fan service, like Captain America out of nowhere saying, Avengers, assemble, when that made no sense really in the context. But they understand in that crescendoing moment with the portals and everything coming up, the way you hit that highlight is with a well-placed, well-timed piece of great fan service to have Captain America go, Avengers, assemble, and everybody freaked out in a good way. Everybody freaked out, right? A lot of Mandalorian is very much fan service, but fan service in the best ways possible. And when you can effectively use fan service that way, it does that sort of thing, Frankie. It makes you want to go and grab your old toys and start playing with them. I know I grabbed my iPad and I used to do all these sketches of the Death Star. I can't draw for the life of me, but I can draw the Death Star. I don't know why, but I can't draw anything else. I can't even draw a cat. But I know after watching that, maybe it was the next day, I just found myself on my iPad on one of my apps and I was just drawing the Death Star just because I wanted to play Star Wars. Man, I wanted to get my friends together and play a Star Wars role-playing game, even though we can't have people who don't live in our house right now. I just wanted to grab my friends and play the Star Wars role-playing game. I wanted to play with my Star Wars toys. I wanted to load up Battlefront, and I wanted to load up Fallen Order. And I just wanted to play in Star Wars. And that's what really good, effective, proper, skilled use of fan service can do and accomplish. You use it the right way, man. It can be incredibly effective. Incredibly effective. The problem is a lot of filmmakers and storytellers don't know how to use it right. Some do. And when you use it right, it can create really great, exciting moments. And it's those moments that stick with us, right? It's those moments that stick with us. Anyway, guys, listen. For Orange Hand, Anonymous, Zombatron, Koa, and all the rest, there are still a bunch of questions to go here, guys, but we've gone well over our 2 hours. We're approaching 2.5 hours now. So we need to call it a day here for now. But do not worry, guys. For all of you who sent in questions, we will be doing a companion video later tonight, and we will get all of the rest of the questions addressed, and that'll go up either later tonight or tomorrow. So there will be a companion video going up tomorrow. Just to remind you guys, today is the final regular episode of the John Campea Show before Christmas. Now, I probably might do a live, maybe some fun live stream here or there, or I might put up a random video like we're going to be doing a companion video with all the remaining questions that you guys have sent in. But as far as there will not be a 10 a.m. John Campea Show tomorrow or Wednesday, and probably not, there might be one Thursday, but probably not. So there probably won't be another regular one before Friday. Just want to keep your guys' eyes open on the community tab, on our YouTube channel, or follow me on social media at John Campea. And if any of that changes, I'll make sure I update you guys for sure. But anyway, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you guys so much for being here. It has been an awesome honor and privilege to have you here. And a special thank you to all you guys who've sent in those live questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, because you supported this channel while you did it. And all of us here involved with the John Campea Show, thank you guys very much for that. Please, guys, remember, do the four main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.